The county lawman's boots hit the porch like a death sentence. "These children aren't yours, Bennett. 10 days, then they go to the state orphanage." Aneth Coyle's chalk snapped in her fist. 4 pairs of eyes turned toward her, terrified, pleading. Colt Bennett stood frozen, jaw working like he wanted to speak, but couldn't find words that mattered. She'd come to this ranch 3 months ago, believing she had nothing left to give. She'd been wrong about everything. Before we begin, hit subscribe and stay until the end. I promise this story will stay with you. Comment your city so I can see how far we've traveled together. Now, let's go back to where it started. 3 months earlier, the supply wagon rattled to a stop outside Bennett Ranch, and Aneth stepped down with 1 carpet bag and 0 expectations. The driver jerked his thumb toward a weathered house tucked against the foothills. "That's it. Good luck, ma'am." The way he said it made her stomach drop. "Is there something I should know?" "Just that you're the 4th teacher this year." He snapped the reins. "Don't expect miracles." The wagon disappeared in a cloud of dust. Aneth stood alone in the yard, gripping her bag. A hammer rang against metal somewhere behind the barn, steady, determined strikes that spoke of work that never ended. "You gonna stand there all day?" Aneth spun. A girl sat on the porch steps, dark braids falling past her shoulders, eyes older than her 8 or 9 years. "I'm Aneth Coyle, the new teacher. Nora Bennett." The girl stood brushing dirt from her dress with practiced efficiency. "How long you staying?" "I beg your pardon." Last one cried after 2 days. One before that locked herself in her room and wouldn't come out. The one before that... Nora shrugged. "She called us demons and left before breakfast." Aneth set down her bag. "What did you do to her?" "Asked questions, that's all." Nora's chin lifted. She didn't like that we already knew she was lying. Lying about what? About wanting to help. About caring. The girl's voice went flat. Adults lie about that a lot. Before Aneth could respond, the hammering stopped. A man emerged from the barn, tall, sun-weathered, moving with the careful economy of someone who'd learned pain, taught better lessons than waste. He couldn't have been more than 35, but his eyes held lifetimes. "Miss Coyle." He pulled off his work gloves, offered a calloused hand. "Colt Bennett." His grip was brief, firm. No smile. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Bennett. Might want to hold your gratitude until you've met all 4. He glanced at Nora. "Where are your brothers and Lahi?" "Samuel's fixing the chicken coop. Thomas is looking for his rock collection again. Lahi's under the porch." Colt's expression tightened. "Still, won't come out. I tried singing, but I'll handle it." He turned to Aneth. "Come inside. We'll talk terms." The house was sparse, clean, but stripped of anything decorative. A table, chairs, a stove that had seen decades of use. Everything functional, nothing soft. Colt poured coffee without asking if she wanted any. "Pays room and board plus $15 a month. You teach reading, writing, arithmetic. Nothing fancy." "What happened to the previous teachers?" "They wanted different children." He set the cup in front of her. "These kids have been through hell, Miss Coyle. They don't trust easy, and they don't perform like trained animals. If that's a problem, better to know now." Aneth wrapped her hands around the hot cup. "Tell me about them." "Samuel's 10. Lost his parents in a fire, watched it happen. Thomas is 6, been passed around since he was born. Nobody wanted him." Colt's jaw worked. Nora's mother gave her up when her father drank himself to death. Said she couldn't look at the girl without seeing him. And Lahi, the one under the porch, she's 4. Her people died crossing the mountains last winter. She was the only survivor. He met Aneth's eyes. She hasn't spoken since, just screams at night sometimes. The coffee burned Aneth's throat. "You took them all in." "Somebody had to." "Are you their legal guardian?" His expression went hard as granite. "What I am is the only thing between them and an orphanage that'll split them up and work them until there's nothing left. Legal doesn't always mean right." Aneth understood then. The isolation. The advertisement asking for no references. The teachers who fled. Mr. Bennett, I need to tell you something before you hire me. Go on. Her hands trembled against the cup. I can't have children. I was married once. We tried for 7 years. 3 times I carried a baby and 3 times... She stopped, forced air into her lungs. The doctor said my body isn't built for it. My husband left after the 3rd loss. Said he needed a real wife. She waited for pity. It always came the softening of eyes, the careful words that somehow made her failure more visible. Colt Bennett just nodded. Good. Aneth blinked. Excuse me? I've got enough kids for both of us. He gestured toward the window where Nora was visible in the yard. They don't need someone dreaming about babies that aren't here. They need someone who'll see them. Something cracked open in Aneth's chest, something she'd sealed shut after her husband packed his bags and told her she was defective. When do I start? Right now. Colt stood. Let's get Lahi out from under that porch. Outside, Nora stood near the porch steps, arms crossed. She won't come, Pa. I already tried. Colt knelt, peering into the darkness beneath the porch. Lahi, it's safe, sweetheart. Come on out. Silence. Aneth crouched beside him. She could just make out a small shape pressed against the far corner, eyes gleaming in the shadows. She's terrified, Aneth whispered. Dog came through the yard this morning. Big one. Spooked her. What happened to her family? Starved, froze, both. Colt's voice went rough. She watched every one of them die. 4 years old, and she watched. Aneth's throat constricted. Without thinking, she started humming an old lullaby her own mother had sung. Not words, just melody. Soft, steady. The shape under the porch shifted. Aneth kept humming, reaching one hand into the darkness. Not grabbing, just offering. She hummed and waited, hummed and waited. Tiny fingers touched hers. Aneth's breath caught, but she didn't move, just kept humming while those small fingers explored hers, testing, questioning. Finally, Lahi crawled forward. Dirt streaked her face, and her dark eyes were huge with fear. But she let Aneth draw her out into the light. Hello, sweetheart, Aneth whispered. You're safe now. Lahi buried her face against Aneth's shoulder and didn't make a sound. Colt stared at them both, something unreadable crossing his face. Last teacher said Lahi was simple, said she'd never be right in the head. The last teacher was an idiot. Aneth stroked the child's tangled hair. She's not simple. She's surviving. Miss Coyle? Yes. I think you might actually last. That first day blurred past. Aneth met Samuel defiant and testing, watching her with eyes that had seen adults fail too many times. Thomas showed her his rock collection with desperate pride, like he expected her to dismiss it. Nora tried to mother everyone while pretending she didn't need mothering herself. And Lahi stayed silent, but she watched. Always watching. By evening, Aneth's head pounded, and her voice was raw. Colt showed her to a small room off the kitchen, a bed, a basin, a window facing east. It's not much, he said. It's perfect. He lingered in the doorway. Miss Coyle, thank you, for Lahi, for all of it. We're barely started, Mr. Bennett. Still, thank you. After he left, Aneth unpacked her few belongings. 3 dresses, a book of poetry, a photograph of her ex-husband. She shoved it face down in the drawer and slammed it shut. A knock. Nora appeared with a folded quilt. Pa said you might need this. Nights get cold. That's kind. Thank you. Nora shifted her weight. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you going to try to make us call you Mama? Pain lanced through Aneth's chest. No, sweetheart. I'm your teacher. Good. But disappointment flickered across Nora's face before she hid it. 'Cause we don't need a mama. We got Pa. After the girl left, Aneth sat on the bed holding the worn quilt. Someone had mended it with small, patient stitches. Someone had cared. She pressed her face into the fabric and let herself cry, not from grief this time, but from something more dangerous. Hope. Morning came fast. Aneth woke to voices arguing about chicken feeding duties and boots stomping across the porch. She dressed quickly and emerged to find controlled chaos. Colt stood at the stove, flipping flapjacks while simultaneously refereeing Samuel and Thomas. Both of you together. Problem solved. He glanced at Aneth. Coffee's hot. Cups are there. Thank you. She poured one, noting how Lahi clung to Nora's skirt thumb in her mouth. Does she ever eat with you? When she feels safe enough. Some days yes, some days no. Colt plated the flapjacks. We don't force it. After breakfast, he showed her the schoolroom, a corner of the main room, with a slate board and 3 small slates for the children. I need to check fences, back by supper. He paused, hat in hand. Samuel will test you. Don't let him. I can handle a 10-year-old boy, Mr. Bennett. Can you handle a 10-year-old boy who watched his parents burn alive? The question hung between them. Aneth straightened her spine. Yes, I can. Colt studied her face, then nodded. I believe you. After he left, Aneth faced her students. Samuel sat with arms crossed, defiant. Thomas fidgeted with a piece of string. Nora watched her, carefully protective of silent Lahi. Before lessons, I want to know what each of you loves. Silence. I'll start. I love thunderstorms, the way they smell the electricity in the air. And I love strawberries, even though they make my tongue itch. She smiled. Thomas. The 6-year-old raised his hand like she might hit him for speaking. I like rocks, different kinds. I got 23. Geology, that's science. Excellent. She turned to Samuel. What about you? Don't like nothing. He likes Pa's stories, Nora said quietly. About cattle drives and the war. Samuel's ears reddened. That's different. It's history, Aneth said. What else? Grudgingly, I like knowing how things work. Why windmills pump water, how guns fire. Engineering, mathematics. Aneth knelt by Lahi. And you, little one, what makes you happy? The child pressed her face into Nora's dress. She likes flowers, Nora offered, and birds. Then we'll learn about all those things. Aneth stood. Here's what we're doing every day, reading, writing, arithmetic. But we'll use what you love to teach it. Thomas, we'll read about rocks and minerals. Samuel will calculate trajectories and distances. Nora will study plants and healing. Lahi will learn every flower and bird in Wyoming. Samuel squinted at her. That's actually not terrible. High praise. Let's begin. She'd expected resistance. What she got was warfare. Samuel refused to pick up his slate. Women can't teach mathematics. My real teacher said so. Your real teacher was wrong. Prove it. Aneth felt every eye on her. This was the test. Fail here, and she'd lose them all. All right, everyone outside. They followed her into the yard, confused. Aneth grabbed a stick and drew a line in the dirt. Samuel, how far can you throw a rock? I don't know. Pretty far. Thomas, get your rock collection. The boy scrambled inside and returned with a flour sack bulging with stones. Aneth selected 3 small, medium, large. Samuel throws each one. We measure the distance. Then we use mathematics to calculate which weight travels farthest and why. Samuel's defiance wavered. That's not school. That's exactly school. It's called physics. She held out the first rock. Unless you're scared, you can't do it. The boy snatched the rock. I ain't scared of nothing. For the next hour, they measured, calculated, debated. Samuel threw rocks with fierce concentration. Thomas carefully marked distances. Even Nora got interested, asking about angles and wind resistance. Lahi sat nearby arranging wildflowers in patterns. When Colt returned at midday, he found them all in the dirt covered in dust arguing about mathematics. "What in God's name?" "Pa," Samuel jumped up. "Did you know heavier rocks don't always go farther? Miss Aneth proved it with numbers." Colt looked at Aneth, eyebrows raised. She shrugged. Unorthodox methods, but effective. His mouth quirked, almost a smile. Better than the last 3. One lasted 2 hours before she quit. What did they do to her? Asked why the sky was blue. She couldn't answer. He poured water from the pump. "You hungry?" They ate together, bread, eggs, cheese, simple food that filled empty stomachs. Through the window, Aneth watched the children play. Samuel showed Thomas how to skip stones. Nora braided grass for Lahi, who giggled soundlessly. "They're good children," Aneth said. "World hasn't been good to them, but they are." Colt set down his cup. "Can I ask you something?" "Please." "Why answer my advertisement? You're educated. You could teach anywhere." Aneth traced the rim of her cup. "Because everywhere else people look at me and see what I'm not, what I failed at. Here maybe I can just be someone useful. We've all got something we're running from, Miss Coyle. Long as you don't bring it to my table or hurt those kids, your past is your business." "Same to you, Mr. Bennett." "Deal." Days became weeks. Aneth fell into rhythms she hadn't known she craved. Mornings lessons that sprawled from the schoolroom to the yard, to wherever curiosity led them. Afternoons chores. Aneth learned to knead bread, mend clothes, tend the garden. Her hands, soft from years of town teaching, grew calloused. Evenings lamplight, while Colt repaired tack, and the children played quiet games before bed. She learned things nobody had told her. Samuel had nightmares about fire every single night. Woke up screaming sometimes. Thomas hoarded food in his pockets because he'd once gone 3 days without eating. Still did it, even though there was plenty. Nora had taught herself to cook at 6 years old because there was nobody else. Could make biscuits better than most grown women. Lahi slept with a rag doll clutched so tight her knuckles went white. The doll was all she had left from before. And Colt had fought in the war, lost his young wife to fever, inherited this ranch from an uncle who died alone. Started taking in strays because empty spaces hurt worse than full ones. One evening while helping Nora with spelling, Aneth felt eyes on her. She glanced up. Colt watched from across the room, not staring, just observing. "Something wrong, Mr. Bennett?" "No. You're just good with them. Natural." Heat crept up her neck. "They make it easy. They make it hell for most people." He stood stretching. "You're different." Before she could respond, Thomas called out, "Miss Aneth, how do you spell constellation?" The moment passed. But something had shifted. She felt it in small things, the way Colt started leaving firewood by her door without being asked. The way he'd pour her coffee before she reached for the pot. The way his gaze lingered half a second longer than necessary. It terrified her. 3 weeks in, everything shattered. Aneth was inside teaching fractions when the scream came. She ran. They all ran. Nora lay in the dirt by the corral, her arm bent wrong, horribly wrong, and her face white as death. "Don't move, sweetheart, don't move." Aneth dropped to her knees, hands shaking. Clean break, she thought distantly. Clean, but bad. Colt appeared, face drained of color. "God, Nora, I'm sorry. The fence post split. I should have... Pa, it hurts." Tears streamed down the girl's face. "I know, baby. I know." He looked at Aneth, and for the first time she saw him truly afraid. "What do we do? Set it. Now, before swelling starts." Aneth met his eyes. "I need you to hold her completely still. Can you do that?" "Yes." Samuel, 2 straight pieces of wood this long. Thomas, torn cloth strips. Go. The boys ran. Aneth cupped Nora's face. "This will hurt. I won't lie. But I need you brave for 2 more minutes. Can you—" Nora nodded, sobbing. Aneth had watched a doctor set her brother's arm once years ago. Memorized every movement because that's what her mind did, collected and stored information she might never need. She needed it now. The boys returned. Aneth positioned herself, hands on Nora's forearm. Colt held the girl's shoulders, his face stricken. "On 3. 1. She pulled. Didn't wait for 3. Pulled hard and fast, and the bone slid back into alignment with a sound that made her stomach turn. Nora's scream could have shattered glass. But the bone was set. Aneth wrapped it tight, splinted it, tied everything off with shaking hands. When she finished, Nora sagged against Colt's chest, whimpering. "You were so brave," Aneth whispered, smoothing the girl's hair. "So incredibly brave." Samuel stood frozen, face wet with tears he was trying to hide. Thomas had thrown up in the dirt. Lahi clutched her rag doll. Silent tears streaming. Colt looked at Aneth over Nora's head. Gratitude, respect, and something deeper neither was ready to name. "Thank you," he said hoarsely. "Let's get her inside." That night, after the children finally slept, Nora dosed with willow bark tea, the others exhausted from fear. Aneth found Colt on the porch steps, head in his hands. She sat beside him. Said nothing. "I should have checked that post," he said finally. "Should have known it was weak. Accidents happen. Not to them. They've had enough accidents, enough loss." His voice cracked. "I'm all they have, Miss Coyle. If something happens to me, if I fail them, you're not failing anyone. I'm not their father, not legally. That's the problem." Ice formed in Aneth's stomach. "What do you mean?" He stood pacing. "I've got no legal claim to any of them. Samuel's aunt could show up tomorrow and take him. Thomas belongs to the state, they could demand him back. Nora's mother could sober up and want her." He stopped. "And Lahi County says I'm harboring an Indian child without permission. If they find out, they'll take her to a government school." "No." The word came out fierce. "They can't." "They can. They have before. I've been lucky where isolated neighbors don't ask questions. But luck doesn't last forever. Then we make it legal. There must be a way. Only adoption. And they don't grant that to single men with no blood relation." He laughed bitterly. "Systems designed to tear families like ours apart." Aneth's heart hammered. "What if you weren't single?" He went still. "What? What if you were married? Would that help?" "Maybe. Probably." He turned slowly. "Miss Coyle." "Think practically," she said, standing. "You need a wife to secure adoption. I need—" She faltered. "I need a place where I'm not broken. It would be an arrangement, a partnership." "That's not fair to you. Fair is letting those children get ripped away. Fair is sending Lahi to a place that'll destroy her." Aneth's voice shook. "I'm not asking for love, Mr. Bennett. I'm asking for a chance to protect them, same as you." Colt stared at her. She watched him wrestle with pride, with fear, with hope. "Let me think on it," he said finally. "Of course." She turned toward the door. His voice stopped her. "Aneth?" She looked back. "Thank you. For today. For Nora. For—" He gestured helplessly. "All of it. You're welcome." Inside, she leaned against the door, shaking. What had she done? Offered marriage to a near stranger. A life built on pragmatism instead of love. But she thought of Nora's arm in her hands. Thomas's hoarded food. Samuel's nightmares. Lahi's silence. She thought of the way Colt's voice gentled when he talked to them. The way his hands mended broken things. The way his whole body had trembled when Nora screamed. This wasn't about love. It was about something more fundamental: survival, belonging, family built by choice instead of blood. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. So, she didn't sleep that night. Lay in bed listening to the house settle to Colt's boots pacing the porch to Nora whimpering in her sleep. Dawn came gray and cold. Aneth dressed and emerged to find Colt at the stove making coffee. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Morning," she said quietly. "Morning." He poured 2 cups set, one in front of her. "About last night?" "You don't have to answer now. Take your time." "I already know my answer." He met her eyes. "But I need to know something first. Why? Really, why you could leave? Find a normal position, a normal life. Why would you tie yourself to this?" Aneth wrapped her hands around the hot cup. "Because for 7 years I was told I was defective, broken, less than a real woman. And then I came here and nobody cared what I couldn't do. They only cared what I could." Her voice steadied. "Those children don't need someone who can bear babies. They need someone who'll stay, someone who'll fight for them. And for the first time in my life, I can be that person." Colt was quiet for a long moment. "All right," he said finally. "We'll do it, but on one condition." "What?" "You're not just signing papers, you're family. That means you're stuck with us, all the mess, all the chaos, all the broken pieces. No leaving when it gets hard." "I won't leave. Promise me." She looked at him, this man who'd taken in 4 unwanted children, who'd carried their nightmares like his own, who'd built a family from nothing but stubborn love. "I promise." He nodded. "Then we'll ride to town tomorrow. Get it done legal before hoofbeats." They both turned toward the window. A rider appeared on the ridge, official uniform, county insignia visible even at this distance. Aneth's blood went cold. "Is that the law?" Colt's face hardened. "They said 10 days. It's only been 5. "Why are they early?" "Because someone talked. Someone always talks." He grabbed his hat. "Stay inside with the children. Don't let them see your face if you can help it." "Colt, just stay inside, please." He walked out, and Aneth pressed herself against the wall by the window, heart hammering. The rider stopped in the yard. She couldn't hear words, but she saw Colt's body language, defensive, protective. Saw him gesture toward the house. Saw the lawman shake his head, pull out papers. Behind her, small feet padded across the floor. "Miss Aneth," Samuel's voice rough with sleep. "What's happening?" She turned. All 4 children stood there. Samuel defiant. Thomas scared, Nora cradling her splinted arm, Lahi clutching her doll. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just a visitor." "That's the county man." Samuel's voice went flat. "He's come to take us away, hasn't he?" "No." Aneth knelt, gathering them close. "No, I won't let that happen." "You can't stop it. Nobody can." Samuel's eyes filled with tears he refused to shed. "We always get taken away. That's what happens to kids like us. Not this time." "You don't know that." "I do." Aneth gripped his shoulders. "Because this time, you've got me. And I don't quit. Do you understand? I don't give up, and I don't let go." Through the window, she watched Colt arguing with the lawman. Watched him point toward the house again. Watched the lawman shake his head firm. Then Colt turned. Their eyes met across the distance. And Aneth saw it in his face, the same thing she felt. This family was worth fighting for. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The lawman remounted his horse and rode away. Colt stood in the yard, papers in his hand, shoulders bowed. Then he straightened. Turned toward the house. Started walking. And Aneth knew somehow, she knew everything was about to change. Colt walked back toward the house with those papers clutched in his fist like they might burn through his skin. Aneth met him at the door, children clustered behind her like she could shield them from whatever news he carried. What did he say? Colt didn't answer right away, just looked at the four faces peering around Aneth's skirt, and his jaw worked like he was chewing words too bitter to swallow. Inside, all of you. They gathered around the kitchen table. Colt spread the papers out, smoothing creases with hands that shook just slightly. Aneth had never seen him shake before. County's got wind of the situation here, he said finally. Someone reported that I'm keeping children without legal guardianship. Who? Samuel's voice came out hard. Who told? Doesn't matter. What matters is, they're coming back in 5 days, not 10, like they said, to take you to the territorial orphanage in Cheyenne. Thomas started crying, just quiet tears sliding down his face while he tried not to make noise, like crying itself might get him in trouble. Nora pulled him close with her good arm. We gonna let them? Not if I can help it. Colt looked at Aneth. But I need time. Time to file adoption papers, get them processed. Make it legal. 5 days isn't enough. Then we make it enough. Aneth's voice came out stronger than she felt. What do you need? Proof I can provide for them. Character witnesses, a stable home environment. He paused. And preferably a wife, because apparently the county doesn't trust a single man to raise children proper. Samuel's head snapped up. You getting married? That's the plan. To who? Colt glanced at Aneth. She felt 4 pairs of eyes swing toward her, and her face went hot. To Miss Coyle? Colt said. If she's still willing? The silence stretched out like taffy. Then Nora said quietly, You don't got to marry Pa just for us, Miss Aneth. That's not fair to you. It's not about fair. Aneth knelt beside the girl's chair. It's about what's right. And fighting for this family is the rightest thing I've done in years. But you don't even love him. Samuel crossed his arms. People are supposed to love each other when they get married. There's different kinds of love, Aneth said carefully. There's the lightning strike kind that happens fast and burns hot. And there's the kind that grows slow, built on respect and shared purpose. Your pa and I were choosing each other. That's worth something. Lahi had been silent through all of it, but now she moved. Walked right up to Aneth and pressed her small body against Aneth's side. Didn't say anything, just held on. Aneth's throat closed up. She wrapped an arm around the child and looked at Colt over Lahi's dark hair. We ride to town today, she said. Get married today. File the papers today. Don't give them time to stop us. Town's 4 hours there and back. We'd need a witness, someone to watch the children while we're gone. Aneth stood. What about your nearest neighbor? Can we trust them? Martha Henderson lives 2 miles west. She's good people. Colt grabbed his hat. I'll ride over, ask her to come sit with the kids. We leave in an hour. After he left, Aneth turned to face 4 worried faces. Listen to me, all of you. This changes nothing about who we are. Mr. Bennett and I getting married is just paper. Just making legal what's already true, that you're our family and nobody's taking you away. But what if it doesn't work? Thomas whispered. What if they take us anyway? Then your pa and I will follow you to that orphanage and raise holy hell until they give you back. But it won't come to that. You hear me? It won't. She said it with such conviction that she almost believed it herself. The next hour blurred past. Aneth changed into her best dress, dark blue wool, nothing fancy but clean and pressed. Her hands fumbled with the buttons. She'd sworn she'd never marry again, never give another man the power to look at her and see failure. But Colt Bennett didn't look at her that way. Never had. When she emerged, Nora was waiting with a handful of wildflowers. For your hair, the girl said shyly. Brides are supposed to have flowers. Aneth's eyes stung. Thank you, sweetheart. Nora tucked the flowers into Aneth's braid with careful fingers. You're gonna be our ma now, for real. I'm going to be whatever you need me to be. I need you to not leave. Nora's voice dropped to almost nothing. Everyone leaves. Aneth cupped the girl's face. I'm not everyone. And I made your pa a promise. I'm keeping it. Martha Henderson arrived, a weathered woman in her 50s with kind eyes and no-nonsense energy. She took one look at the situation and nodded. Go on then. I'll keep these hooligans fed and out of trouble. Thank you, Martha. Colt was already saddling 2 horses. There's bread and ham in the cold box. If anything happens, nothing's gonna happen except you're gonna get hitched and come back married. Now get. The ride to town was quiet. Aneth had ridden horses before, but not often, and she concentrated on not falling off while her mind spun in circles. This morning, she'd been a school teacher. By evening, she'd be a wife. Again. Except, not really. This wasn't like before, no promises of love, no expectations of romance. This was a business arrangement, a partnership. So why did her stomach twist every time she glanced at Colt's profile? You're quiet, he said after an hour. Thinking. Second thoughts. No, just wondering what comes after. After we get married. After we file the papers. After the county man comes back. After we prove we're a family. She adjusted her grip on the reins. What does our life look like then? Colt was quiet for a moment. I suppose it looks like what it's been. You teach the kids, I run the ranch. We figure it out as we go. And at night, the question came out before she could stop it. He understood what she was asking. You keep your room, I keep mine. This is for the kids, not that other thing. Relief washed through her, mixed with something else she didn't want to examine. All right, good. Unless... He stopped. Unless what? Unless someday you want different. But that's your choice. Always your choice. They rode on in silence after that, but the air between them felt charged somehow, like a storm building on the horizon. Town appeared, finally, a handful of buildings clustered around a main street. The courthouse sat at one end, weathered brick with white trim. Colt tied the horses and offered Aneth his arm. Ready? No. Yes. Inside, a clerk looked up from his paperwork with bored eyes. Help you. Need a marriage license, Colt said, and someone to perform the ceremony. The clerk's eyebrows rose. Today. Right now. Well, the man shuffled papers. License costs $2. Judge Morrison can marry you if he's not busy. That's another $1 for his time. He squinted at them. You two sure about this? Seems rushed. We're sure, Aneth said firmly. All right then. Fill these out. He pushed papers across the counter. Names, ages, previous marriages, if any. Witness signatures, you got witnesses. Can you witness? Colt asked. I suppose. Let me get Morrison. They filled out the papers. Aneth's hand cramping around the pen as she wrote her name, her age, her previous marriage status. Widow, she wrote because that's what she'd told people. Easier than explaining abandonment. Beside her, Colt wrote carefully, tongue between his teeth, like a schoolboy concentrating. His previous marriage line said widower. Wife died of fever 1881. Judge Morrison appeared, an older man with spectacles and ink stains on his fingers. He looked them over with sharp eyes. You two know what you're doing? Yes, sir, Colt said. Marriage isn't something to enter lightly. It's a covenant before God and law. We understand that. Morrison studied them for another moment, then shrugged. All right, raise your right hands. It happened so fast. One moment they were two separate people, the next the judge was saying words about lawful union and promises to keep. Aneth heard herself say, I do, like her voice belonged to someone else. Colt's I do came out rough and low. By the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride, though you look like that might be the last thing on your minds. Colt turned to Aneth. Their eyes met. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull back, and pressed his lips to hers, Brief, dry, formal. Over in a heartbeat. But her heart wasn't beating normally. It hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. "Congratulations," Morrison said dryly. "That'll be $3 total." Colt paid. The clerk handed them a certificate with their names written in careful script. Colt James Bennett and Aneth Rose Coyle, now legally wed. "One more thing," Colt said. "I need to file adoption papers for 4 children." The clerk blinked. 4 all at once. All at once, 2 boys, 2 girls, ages 4 to 10. That's highly irregular. Maybe. But it's legal, isn't it? Now that I'm married. The clerk looked at Morrison, who nodded slowly. Technically, yes. But the process takes time. Applications, investigations, hearings. How much time? Months usually. Sometimes longer. Aneth's stomach dropped. "We don't have months. We have 5 days." 5 days. Why 5 days? Colt's jaw tightened. Because the county's threatening to take them to an orphanage. We need this filed now so we can show we're taking proper legal action. Morrison frowned. "Who's the county officer?" "Man named Pruitt. Showed up this morning with papers." "Hank Pruitt." Morrison's frown deepened. "He's zealous. Sees himself as protecting children from unfit homes. Unfortunately, his definition of unfit is fairly broad." "My home isn't unfit," Colt said quietly. "Those kids are fed, clothed, educated, and loved. That's more than most." "I don't doubt it, but Pruitt's got the law on his side." Morrison tapped the desk. "Here's what I can do. I'll file the adoption applications today with a note of urgency. I'll also write a letter to the Territorial Family Court explaining the situation. It won't stop Pruitt from coming in 5 days, but it might slow him down. Might give you time." "How much time?" Aneth asked. "Hard to say. A week, 2 depends on how fast the court moves and how stubborn Pruitt is." Colt exhaled slowly. "It'll have to do. What do you need from us?" "Documentation. Birth certificates if you have them, though I suspect you don't. Written statements about how each child came into your care. Character references from neighbors and community members. Medical records if available. Proof you can provide financially deed to your property bank statements if you have them." Morrison pulled out a stack of forms. "Fill these out. Be thorough. The more documentation you provide, the stronger your case." They spent the next 2 hours writing. Aneth's hand ached by the end, but she'd documented everything she could think of: how she'd met each child, what she'd observed of their progress, her qualifications as a teacher, her commitment to their well-being. Colt wrote about finding Samuel wandering after the fire, hollow-eyed and silent. About the church leaving Thomas on his porch with a note saying no one else would take him. About Nora showing up with bruises and her father's death certificate. About carrying Lahi down from the mountain pass, the only survivor of a wagon train that had tried to cross too late in the season. When they finished, Morrison read through everything carefully. "This is good, compelling even. But I need to be honest with you. Pruitt's going to fight this. He doesn't believe children should be raised by anyone outside traditional families. And your situation, Mr. Bennett, with 4 children of no blood relation and questionable legal status." He trailed off. "It's going to be a battle." "I've fought battles before," Colt said. "I'm sure you have. But this is a different kind of war paperwork and legal precedent instead of bullets." Morrison handed back the forms. "I'll file these today. Get me those character references as fast as you can, and pray the judge assigned to your case has more heart than Pruitt does." Outside, the sun had moved across the sky. They'd been in that courthouse for nearly 3 hours. Aneth felt wrung out, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. "We should get back," Colt said. "Martha'll be wondering." "Wait." Aneth touched his arm. "Can we talk for a minute?" They walked to the edge of town where the buildings gave way to scrubland. Wind whispered through the grass, and somewhere a hawk cried. "What is it?" Colt asked. "I need to know you understand what I'm risking." Aneth kept her eyes on the horizon. If this goes wrong, if they take the children anyway, I'll be legally bound to you. A wife with no children and no way out. That's what happened before, and it destroyed me. I know. Do you really? She turned to face him. My first husband looked at me like I was defective, like my body's failure to carry children was a personal insult to his manhood. He stopped touching me, stopped talking to me, finally told me he'd made a mistake and left. Her voice shook. I won't survive that again. If you're going to look at me that way eventually, like I'm broken, tell me now. Colt was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, My wife died bringing our son into the world. The baby died too, never drew a breath. For 2 years after, I couldn't look at pregnant women without feeling like I'd been gutted. Couldn't see babies without wondering what my boy would have looked like. Aneth's throat tightened. But you know what I learned, Colt continued. That there's more than one way to be a parent. More than one way to build a family. Blood doesn't make you kin, choice does. Love does. Those 4 kids back at the ranch, they're mine in every way that matters. And you? He started again. You're not broken, Aneth. You're exactly what those children need. What I need. Don't ever think different. She couldn't speak. Could only nod while tears blurred her vision. Come on. Colt offered his hand. Let's go home. Home. The word settled into her chest like a key finding its lock. They rode back as the sun sank toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Aneth's body ached from hours in the saddle, but her mind felt oddly clear. She'd just married a man she barely knew. She'd signed papers that might change nothing or everything. She'd put her name to a fight that could end in heartbreak. But for the first time in years, she'd chosen something instead of just accepting what life gave her. That had to count for something. Martha met them at the door with flour on her apron and amusement in her eyes. Well, did you do it? We did it, Colt said. About damn time. Those kids have been on pins and needles all afternoon. She untied her apron. They're fed. Thomas tried to run off to find you twice, but I threatened him with extra chores. Lahi actually said 3 words, Where's Miss Aneth? So that's progress. Nora's arm's doing fine, and Samuel only picked 1 fight with his brother. Thank you, Martha. Aneth impulsively hugged the older woman. We couldn't have done this without you. Psh! What are neighbors for? Martha pulled back, eyes kind. You're doing a good thing here, both of you. Don't let anyone tell you different. After she left, they went inside to find 4 anxious faces. Did it work? Samuel asked immediately. We're married, Colt confirmed. And we filed adoption papers. Judge Morrison's helping us. So they can't take us now. Thomas's voice was small, hopeful. They're going to try, but we're going to fight. Aneth sat down, pulling Lahi onto her lap. We need help, though. We need people in town to write letters saying we're a good family. Can you think of anyone? Nora spoke up. Doc Hartley. He fixed my arm that time I broke it before. And Mrs. Chen from the general store, she always gives us peppermints. The blacksmith, Mr. Murphy, Samuel added. He lets me watch him work sometimes. Says I got a good eye for metalwork. Reverend Walsh, Thomas said quietly. He's nice. Doesn't yell like some preachers. Good. Colt nodded. Tomorrow we'll ride to each of them, ask for letters. Tonight we eat and rest. It's been a long day. Dinner was simple leftover stew. Martha had warmed fresh bread milk from their cow. But sitting around that table, Aneth felt something shift. They weren't playing house anymore. This was real. Legal. She was Mrs. Bennett now, for better or worse. After the dishes were washed and the children ready for bed, Nora hung back. Can I ask you something? Of course, Aneth said. Are you scared? Terrified? The honesty seemed to surprise the girl. But you did it anyway. Being scared doesn't mean you don't act. It just means you act despite the fear. Aneth smoothed Nora's braid. Sometimes the things most worth doing are the things that scare us most. I'm scared they're gonna take us away. I know, sweetheart. But you'll fight for us. You promise. With everything I have. Nora nodded slowly, then surprised Aneth by wrapping both arms around her waist and holding tight. I'm glad Pa married you, even if it wasn't for love. After the girl went to bed, Aneth found Colt outside, checking the animals one last time. He looked up when she approached. Kids settled? Finally. Nora asked if I was scared. What did you tell her? The truth. That I'm terrified but doing it anyway. Aneth leaned against the fence. Colt, what happens if we lose? If Pruitt takes them despite everything? Then we don't stop fighting. We follow them to Cheyenne. We petition every judge in the territory. We make so much noise. They have no choice but to listen. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. I didn't survive a war to give up on 4 kids who need me. Who need us? Us, Aneth repeated softly. That's going to take some getting used to. Yeah. He glanced at her. You all right about today? I'm not sure what I am. Everything happened so fast. Regrets? No, just adjusting. She turned to face him fully. We should probably discuss living arrangements. You said I'd keep my room, but people will notice if we don't share space sometimes. Small towns talk. You're right. We'll need to be careful. He thought for a moment. Your room's close to the children's. Makes sense you'd stay there so you can hear if they need something at night. But maybe we move some of my things in there just for show. A shirt hanging on the door, shaving gear on the dresser. And where will you actually sleep? Barn has a decent loft. I've slept there before when I needed space. I don't want to drive you out of your own house. You're not. I'm choosing this. We both are. His eyes held hers. Aneth, this marriage is real in the ways that matter: partnership, commitment, protection. The rest, we'll figure out as we go. No pressure, no expectations. You're a good man, Colt Bennett. I'm trying to be. They stood there in the darkness, 2 people bound by paper and purpose, and Aneth wondered if this strange arrangement might become something more. Someday. Maybe. But for now, it was enough that they stood together. The next morning started before dawn. Colt wanted to visit every potential character witness before Pruitt could poison the well. They split up. Colt taking Samuel to visit the blacksmith, and Doc Hartley Aneth taking Nora and Thomas to the general store and church. Lahi stayed with Martha again, who didn't seem to mind playing grandmother. Mrs. Chen at the general store listened to Aneth's explanation with thoughtful eyes. You need letter for county about children. Yes, saying we provide a good home for them. Mrs. Chen nodded firmly. I write letter. Those children always polite, always grateful. Mr. Bennett good man. He pay his debts, he help others. You tell county they are wrong to take children from good home. Thank you so much. At the church, Reverend Walsh was equally supportive. I've watched Colt Bennett raise those children for the better part of a year now. He brings them to service when he can, teaches them right from wrong, gives them stability. If the county wants to tear that family apart, they'll have to explain themselves to a higher authority than me, and I don't mean the territorial government. By afternoon, they'd collected 5 letters and promises of 3 more. It wasn't much, but it was something. Evidence that they weren't alone in this fight. That evening, Aneth helped Nora and Lahi prepare dinner, while the boys did evening chores with Colt. The domesticity of it struck her peeling potatoes while Nora chattered about a bird she'd seen Lahi humming tunelessly as she set the table. This could be her life now. Not the life she'd imagined, but maybe the life she'd needed all along. Miss Aneth, Nora said suddenly. Should we call you Ma now, since you're married to Pa? Aneth's hands stilled. What do you want to call me? I don't know. Miss Aneth feels wrong now, but Ma feels... The girl trailed off. Scary. Yeah. Then how about we figure it out as we go? Call me what feels right in the moment. There's no rush. Aneth squeezed the girl's shoulder. Names are just words. What matters is what's underneath. 3 days passed in a blur of chores, lessons, and anxious waiting. Aneth taught mathematics using measurements for a new chicken coop. Samuel grudgingly admitted her teaching methods weren't terrible. Thomas showed her his complete rock collection, now 27 specimens, with passionate explanations of each one's geological significance. Lahi spoke more often simple words, but words nonetheless. And Colt watched it all with something like wonder in his eyes. On the 4th day, Aneth was hanging laundry when she noticed him leaning against the barn just observing. She walked over. Something on your mind? Just thinking how different it is now, having you here. Different good or different bad? Different good. The kids laugh more. They're not as guarded. He paused. Neither am I suppose. You were guarded when I arrived. I've been guarded since Emily died. Easier to keep people at arm's length than risk losing them. His voice went quiet. But you didn't give me that option. You just showed up and fit yourself into our lives like you'd always belonged. Aneth's heart squeezed. Colt, tomorrow's day 5. Pruitt's coming. The reminder hit like cold water. She'd almost let herself forget. Are we ready? She asked. As ready as we'll ever be. Got the letters, got the filed adoption papers, got Morrison's letter to the territorial court. Now we wait and see if it's enough. That night, none of them slept well. Aneth heard Samuel crying out from nightmares twice. She heard Colt's boots pacing the porch until nearly 3 in the morning. She lay awake herself, staring at the ceiling, mentally rehearsing arguments and pleas. Dawn came too fast. They ate breakfast in near silence. Aneth made the children wear their best clothes. She wanted Pruitt to see them cared for, healthy, loved. Colt shaved carefully, put on his one good shirt. They were presenting themselves for judgment, and they both knew it. The lawman arrived precisely at 9 o'clock, accompanied by another man in official dress. Colt met them in the yard. Aneth stood on the porch, children behind her. Mr. Bennett, Pruitt said, I've returned as promised. These are the legal documents transferring custody of the 4 minors to territorial care. If you'll... I've filed adoption papers, Colt interrupted. All 4 children. My wife and I intend to legally adopt them. Pruitt's eyebrows rose. Your wife? Mrs. Bennett. Colt gestured to Aneth. We were married 5 days ago. How convenient. A sudden marriage just as I arrived to claim the children. Nothing sudden about it, Aneth said, stepping forward. We've been planning this for weeks. Ask anyone in town. It was a lie, but a necessary one. Pruitt's expression suggested he didn't believe it anyway. Be that as it may, adoption proceedings take months. These children need immediate placement. They have immediate placement. They're home. Colt's voice hardened. And we have support from the community character references from the town doctor, the Reverend local merchants. Judge Morrison has written to the territorial court on our behalf. The man with Pruitt spoke up. I'm Oliver Henshaw, Territorial Child Welfare Officer. Mr. Pruitt brought me to evaluate the situation. He looked around at the well-maintained ranch, the clean children, the obvious care in every detail. May I speak with the children? Of course, Aneth said, though her stomach twisted. Henshaw approached the porch. He had kind eyes, she noticed. That was something. Hello there, I'm Mr. Henshaw. Can you tell me your names? Samuel stepped forward. Samuel Garrett. That's Thomas, Nora, and Lahi. Thank you, Samuel. Can I ask you some questions? The boy's jaw set. I know what you're doing. You're trying to decide if we're happy, so you can take us away or leave us. But it don't matter what we say, does it? Adults never listen to kids. I'm listening right now. Then listen to this. Mr. Bennett saved my life. My parents died and I had nowhere to go, and he took me in, gave me a home, taught me how to work, never once made me feel like I was a burden. And Miss Aneth, Mrs. Bennett, now she's teaching us real things, not just school stuff. She cares. Samuel's voice shook. If you take us away from here, you're not protecting us. You're punishing us for having bad luck." Henshaw's expression remained neutral. "Thomas, do you have anything to add?" The 6-year-old shook his head, pressing against Nora's side. "He don't talk to strangers much," Nora explained. "Too many people hurt him before, but he's happy here. We all are. Can't you just leave us alone?" "Lahi." Henshaw's voice gentled. "Can you tell me anything?" The tiny girl looked at Aneth, then at Colt, then back at Henshaw. Very quietly she said, "Home." That one word hung in the air. Henshaw straightened, turned to Pruitt. "I need to inspect the house, see where these children sleep, what conditions they're living in." "Of course," Colt said. "Whatever you need." The inspection took 30 minutes. Henshaw examined every room, saw the small but clean beds, the school books and slates, the mended clothes hanging on pegs. He asked questions about meals, education, medical care. Aneth answered everything honestly, showing him her lesson plans. Nora's splinted arm with its proper healing. Thomas's rock collection that spoke of a child encouraged to pursue his interests. Finally, they returned to the yard where Pruitt waited impatiently. "Well," Pruitt demanded, "you've seen enough. These children need proper placement in a structured facility where—" "Mr. Pruitt," Henshaw's voice cut through. "I've seen enough. These children are adequately cared for. More than adequately, they're thriving. The home is clean, the adults responsible, and most importantly, the children clearly feel secure here." "That's not the point. Mr. Bennett has no legal—" "He has filed adoption papers. That's more legal standing than many situations I've encountered." Henshaw pulled out a document. "Furthermore, Judge Morrison's letter indicates he's expediting the adoption hearing. It's scheduled for 2 weeks from today." Aneth's knees nearly buckled with relief. 2 weeks. Pruitt's face flushed. "That's highly irregular. The normal process is at the discretion of the presiding judge, and Morrison has discretion." Henshaw looked at Colt. "The children may remain here pending the hearing. However, I'll be conducting follow-up visits to ensure continued adequate care. Any sign of neglect or abuse, and they'll be removed immediately." "Understood." "Understood," Colt said. "Thank you." After the two men left, Pruitt clearly furious. Henshaw looking thoughtful, the family stood in the yard, processing what had just happened. "Did we win?" Thomas asked finally. "We bought time," Aneth said. 2 weeks until the hearing. Then we find out for sure. But we get to stay together until then." Nora's voice was small. "Yes, together." Samuel let out a shaky breath. Then, without warning, he started crying. Deep, wrenching sobs he'd clearly been holding back for days. Colt pulled the boy into his arms, and then they were all crying, even Lahi, while Aneth held them together like she could physically keep them from being torn apart. "It's all right," she whispered. "We're all right. For now, we're all right." That night, after the children finally exhausted themselves and fell asleep, Aneth found Colt on the porch again. He handed her a cup of coffee without a word. They sat in silence, listening to night sounds, crickets, distant coyotes, the wind through the grass. 2 weeks, Colt said finally. Then we face a judge who'll decide our fate based on what legal precedent, personal bias, whether he had a good breakfast that morning. We face a judge with evidence of a loving, stable home, with community support, with children who chose us as much as we chose them. And if it's not enough, Aneth set down her cup. Then we fight harder. We appeal. We make noise until someone listens. But Colt, we're not doing this alone anymore. Did you see how many people wrote those letters? How Henshaw looked at the children and saw what we see? We're not alone. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm glad I married you, Aneth Bennett. Her heart jumped at hearing her new name. Even though it's complicated, especially because it's complicated, easy things don't usually matter much. Hard things you have to fight for. Those are the ones worth having. She reached over, found his hand in the darkness. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid and real. 2 weeks, she said. Whatever comes after, we face it together. Together. They sat there holding hands like teenagers, two people bound by paper and purpose, and something neither was ready to name. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to human struggles, and somewhere in the house, 4 children slept, dreaming of a future that might or might not be theirs to claim. But for tonight, they were together, and that would have to be enough. The 2 weeks before the hearing passed in a strange suspension between hope and dread. Aneth threw herself into teaching with fierce determination, as if perfect lessons and flawless recitations could somehow prove their worth to a judge who'd never see them. Samuel mastered long division. Thomas learned to read full sentences without stumbling. Nora memorized the names of 17 medicinal plants. And Lahi, precious silent Lahi, spoke in complete sentences, now her voice soft but steady. "Can I have more milk, please?" 5 words that made Aneth want to weep with relief every time she heard them. Colt worked from dawn until dark, repairing everything that showed even minor wear. The fence got new posts. The barn got patched shingles. The house received a fresh coat of whitewash. He was building armor out of carpentry and paint, trying to make their home so undeniably good that no judge could fault it. Aneth watched him push himself too hard and said nothing because she understood. They were both trying to control the uncontrollable, to make certainty out of chaos through sheer force of will. On the 8th day, Martha Henderson came by with bread and news. "Heard something in town you ought to know," she said, setting the bread on the table. "Pruitt's been asking questions. Lots of questions." Colt's jaw tightened. "What kind of questions?" "About your past. About Miss Aneth's, sorry, Mrs. Bennett's previous marriage. About how you came to have 4 children of different ages, with no blood relation." Martha's expression was grim. "He's building a case against you." "Let him build," Aneth said, though her stomach churned. "We've got nothing to hide." "Don't you, though?" Martha looked at her kindly. "I'm not judging, dear. But if Pruitt finds out your first husband left you because you couldn't bear children, he'll use it. He'll say, you're using these kids to fill a void, that you're not thinking clearly, that your judgment's compromised by grief." "That's not—" Aneth stopped. Was it true? Had she been trying to fill the empty spaces inside her with 4 children who needed her? Colt spoke up. "Even if that were true, does it matter? Those kids are fed, safe, loved. What difference does it make why we chose to care for them?" "All the difference to men like Pruitt," Martha said. "He sees the world in black and white. Traditional families or broken ones. No in between." She sighed. "I'm just saying, be prepared. He's going to attack your marriage, your motives, everything. And he's good at it." After Martha left, Aneth stood at the window watching the children play in the yard. Samuel was teaching Thomas how to throw a knife at a target chalked on the barn. Nora braided flowers into Lahi's hair while the little girl sat perfectly still, soaking up affection, like parched earth drinking rain. "She's right, isn't she?" Aneth said quietly. "About why I'm doing this." Colt came to stand beside her. "Does it matter?" "It matters if the judge thinks I'm unstable. If he thinks I'm trying to replace children I lost instead of caring for the children I have." "Are you—" She turned to look at him. "I don't know. Maybe at first. But now—" Her voice caught. "Now they're just mine. Ours. Not replacements for anything. Just themselves." "Then that's what you tell the judge. Will it be enough?" "It has to be." That night, Aneth couldn't sleep. She kept replaying Martha's warnings, imagining Pruitt standing before a judge, listing all her failures and inadequacies. How could she fight words she knew were partly true? She heard footsteps on the porch, and knew without looking that Colt couldn't sleep either. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and joined him outside. "You should rest," he said without turning. So should you. They stood together in the darkness, the weight of the coming hearing pressing down on them both. Colt, what if we lose? What if the judge sides with Pruitt and takes them anyway? Then we appeal, we fight. But what if fighting isn't enough? What if... She stopped, unable to voice her deepest fear. What if we're not enough? He finished for her. That's what you're really asking. Yes. He turned to face her fully. Aneth, I've been asking myself that same question every day since I took in Samuel. Whether I was enough. Whether one broken-down cowboy with a dead wife and a head full of war memories had any business trying to save kids who'd already been through hell. His voice roughened. But you know what I figured out, being enough isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up. It's about trying. Those kids don't need perfect parents. They need people who won't quit on them. And if quitting isn't our choice, if it's taken out of our hands, then we live with that. But we don't give up beforehand just because we're scared. Aneth leaned against the porch rail, feeling the cool night air on her face. I'm terrified of loving them and losing them, of opening my heart again just to have it shattered. I know, me too. Colt moved closer. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is walking away now to protect ourselves and letting those kids think they weren't worth the risk. I can't do that. Can you? No. The word came out fierce. No, I can't. Then we face whatever comes, together. He said that word together like it meant something. Like they were building something real out of this strange marriage of convenience. Aneth wanted to believe it. God, she wanted to believe it. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Doc Hartley and Reverend Walsh arrived together looking serious. We heard Pruitt's been stirring up trouble, Doc Hartley said without preamble. Thought we should give you a heads up. What kind of trouble? Colt asked. He's questioning your fitness as parents, suggesting Mrs. Bennett is emotionally unstable due to her previous losses, implying you might be keeping the children for financial gain, county stipends, potential inheritance, that sort of thing. Aneth felt her face heat with anger. Financial gain. We're barely scraping by. Those children cost more to feed and clothe than... We know that, Reverend Walsh interrupted gently. Everyone who knows you knows that. But Pruitt's good at planting seeds of doubt. He's suggesting you rushed into marriage for appearance's sake, that you're playing house instead of providing genuine stability. That's not true, Aneth said. We know. That's why we're here. Doc Hartley pulled out a folder. We've written additional letters, detailed accounts of our observations, medical records showing the children are healthy and well cared for, character assessments of both of you. He handed the folder to Colt. Give these to Judge Morrison. They'll help counter Pruitt's narrative. Why are you doing this? Aneth asked, throat tight. You barely know us. Because I've been a doctor for 30 years, Hartley said. I know the difference between children who are surviving and children who are thriving. Your 4 are thriving. That's rare enough to be worth protecting. Reverend Walsh nodded. And because sometimes the most righteous thing a person can do is stand between injustice and the innocent. That's what you're doing. We'd be poor Christians if we didn't stand with you. After they left, Colt spread the letters on the table. There were 5 new ones, detailed thorough, painting a picture of a family built on love instead of law. People keep surprising me, he said quietly. Good people. Aneth agreed. We're lucky to have them. Luck's got nothing to do with it. You earned this teaching those kids, being kind to everyone you meet, showing up even when it's hard. He looked at her. You're good at this, Aneth, being part of something. I think maybe you forgot that after your first marriage fell apart. She had forgotten. Had spent 2 years believing she was fundamentally unworthy of family, of belonging. These past weeks had been slowly rebuilding something she'd thought permanently broken. I'm still scared, she admitted. So am I, but at least we're scared together. The week crawled toward the hearing date. Aneth prepared the children as best she could, trying to explain what would happen without terrifying them. "A judge is like a teacher," she told them one evening. "He asks questions to understand things better. He's going to ask about your life here, whether you're happy, whether you feel safe. All you need to do is tell the truth." "What if the truth isn't good enough?" Samuel asked bluntly. "What if we tell him we love it here and he takes us anyway?" "Then it won't be because you did anything wrong. Sometimes adults make decisions kids have no control over. That's not fair, but it's true." "So we're helpless," Samuel said bitterly. "Just like always." "No." Colt knelt in front of the boy. "You're not helpless. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. Whatever happens, you spoke up for yourself. That's the opposite of helpless." "But what if—" "No more what ifs." Colt's voice was firm but gentle. "We've done everything we can. The rest is up to the judge and God, and worrying ourselves sick won't change either of their minds. So tonight, we eat dinner, we do our evening chores, we go to bed. And tomorrow, we get up and do it again. That's how you survive hard things one day at a time." The night before the hearing, Aneth couldn't eat. Her stomach was tied in knots too tight to accept food. She pushed beans around her plate while the children chattered nervously, their anxiety manifesting as excessive energy and silly jokes. After dinner, while washing dishes, Nora sidled up to her. "Miss Aneth, Ma." The girl tested the word carefully. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "If they take us away, will you forget about us?" Aneth's hands stilled in the dishwater. "Never. Not if I live to be 100. Even if you and Pa have real children someday, children that are yours for real." "Nora." Aneth dried her hands and turned to face the girl. "You are real children. You are mine for real. Maybe not by blood, but by every other measure that matters. And nothing, not a judge's decision, not distance, not time will change that. Promise?" "I promise." Nora nodded slowly, then surprised Aneth by hugging her tight. "I love you, Ma. I don't think I ever said that out loud before." Aneth's vision blurred. "I love you too, sweetheart, so much." That night she checked on each child before bed. Samuel pretended to be asleep, but she saw his eyes glistening in the darkness. Thomas clutched his favorite rock, a piece of quartz he'd found by the creek. Nora held Lahi close. The two girls pressed together like they could protect each other through proximity alone. Colt was waiting on the porch when she came out. "They're terrified," she said. "So am I." "What do we do if we lose?" "We've been over this." "No, really. What do we actually do? Do we try to follow them? Do we petition every day? Do we—" Her voice broke. "How do I survive watching them get taken away?" Colt pulled her into his arms. It was the first time he'd held her like this. Not formally, not briefly, but really held her. She buried her face in his chest and let herself shake apart while he held her together. "We survive because they need us to," he said into her hair. "We survive because giving up would mean Pruitt wins. We survive because love doesn't stop just because circumstances change." He pulled back to look at her face. "And Aneth, we're not losing. I won't accept any other outcome. You can't control this. Watch me." His fierce certainty should have been ridiculous. Instead, it steadied her. They stood there holding each other under the stars, drawing strength from shared determination, and Aneth thought maybe love didn't always start with lightning strikes. Maybe sometimes it started with two broken people deciding to be unbroken together. Morning came too fast and too slow simultaneously. Aneth dressed in her best clothes, the dark blue wool that had been her wedding dress now pressed and proper for court. Colt wore his good shirt again, his hair slicked back with water, looking uncomfortable but determined. The children dressed in their Sunday clothes. Samuel's pants were getting too short. He was growing fast, but they were clean and mended. Nora had braided Lahi's hair and tied it with a ribbon Aneth had given her. Thomas kept one hand in his pocket, clutching that piece of quartz like a talisman. They rode to town in the wagon, the journey silent, except for wheels creaking and horses' hooves on packed dirt. Aneth kept one arm around Lahi, who was pressed against her side, and held Thomas's hand with her other. Beside her, Colt drove with Samuel next to him, the boy's face set in hard lines that made him look older than 10. The courthouse looked more imposing than she remembered. People gathered outside, some she recognized, some she didn't. Martha Henderson was there along with Doc Hartley, Reverend Walsh, Mrs. Chen from the general store. Others too, neighbors, townspeople, people whose lives had brushed against theirs in small ways. "They came to support us," Colt said quietly, sounding odd. "They came to support the children," Aneth corrected. "That's what this is about." Inside the courtroom was smaller than she'd expected. Wooden benches, a judge's bench at the front windows, letting in autumn light. Pruitt was already there with another man in official dress, probably his supervisor. They looked confident, prepared. Judge Morrison entered, and everyone stood. He looked older than Aneth remembered, with white hair, and eyes that had seen everything and believed very little. "Be seated," he said. "We're here regarding the adoption petition of Colt and Aneth Bennett for 4 minor children, Samuel Garrett, Thomas Miller, Nora Brennan, and Lahi." He paused. "No surname listed." "She's too young to remember it." "Your Honor," Colt said, "I've been calling her Lahi Bennett." "Presumptuous, given you're not yet her legal guardian." Morrison shuffled papers. "Mr. Pruitt, you've filed an objection to this adoption. Present your case." Pruitt stood, radiating officious certainty. "Your Honor, while the Bennetts may have good intentions, this situation is highly irregular. Mr. Bennett collected these children over the course of a year without proper legal channels. No background investigations, no home studies, no approval from child welfare authorities. He simply took them in." "Because nobody else would," Colt said. Morrison shot him a look, and he subsided. Pruitt continued. "Furthermore, Mr. Bennett was single until 5 days before my initial visit, a timing that suggests marriage of convenience rather than genuine commitment. Mrs. Bennett herself has a troubled history. Her first marriage ended due to her inability to bear children, leaving her emotionally vulnerable and potentially seeking to fill that void through these children." Aneth felt heat flood her face, but she forced herself to stay silent. "Additionally," Pruitt went on, "there's the question of Mr. Bennett's fitness as a guardian. He's a single man, or was until recently, with no family support, living in isolation, with minimal oversight. The children have received no formal schooling until Mrs. Bennett's arrival 3 months ago. The youngest child, this Lahi, is of indigenous descent and should properly be placed in a government facility designed to strip away her culture and make her forget who she is." Colt interrupted, standing. "That's what you mean." "Mr. Bennett, sit down," Morrison said sharply. "Not until I speak my piece." Colt's voice rang through the courtroom. "Those government facilities you're talking about, they're prisons. They take children away from everything they know and punish them for being themselves. Lahi's people died, all of them. I found her half frozen in a mountain pass, and I brought her home because letting her die was unthinkable, and sending her to a government school is just a slower kind of dying." "Mr. Bennett, I'm not finished. You want to talk about irregular. Life is irregular. Those 4 kids sitting right there, they've been through things no child should survive. Fire abandonment, starvation, death. They survived because they're strong and because they got lucky. I gave them a home. Not a perfect home, not a traditional home, but a home where they're safe and wanted. And you want to take that away because it doesn't fit your neat categories of what family should look like." Pruitt stood. "Your Honor, this outburst demonstrates exactly the kind of emotional instability. It demonstrates that he loves those children," a voice called from the back. Martha Henderson stood, chin raised. "I've known Colt Bennett for 5 years. He's the most stable, dependable man I've ever met. And his wife is cut from the same cloth. Those children are thriving under their care." "Mrs. Henderson, this is not the time," Morrison started. "Then when is the time?" Doc Hartley rose. "When those kids are scattered across different orphanages, losing the only family they've got. I've examined all 4 children. They're healthy, well-nourished, and emotionally secure. That's not something you find in every home, traditional or otherwise." "This is highly irregular," Morrison said, but he sounded more interested than annoyed. "So is love," Reverend Walsh added, standing. "So is grace. So is a man who opens his home to the unwanted and unloved. If we only recognized families that looked like everyone else, we'd miss the ones that matter most." More people stood, Mrs. Chen, the blacksmith, others, Aneth barely knew. All speaking up, all vouching for the Bennetts, all insisting these children belonged where they were. Pruitt's face had gone red. "Your Honor, while these testimonials are touching, they don't address the legal issues at hand. These children need permanent stable placement they have permanent stable placement," Samuel said, his young voice cutting through the noise. Everyone turned. The boy stood beside the bench where the children sat, fists clenched at his sides. "Samuel, sit down," Aneth said gently. "No, Ma. I got something to say." He looked at Judge Morrison. "You want to know if we're safe, if we're cared for? Ask us. We're right here. Stop talking about us like we don't get a say." Morrison leaned forward. Expression unreadable. "All right, son. I'm asking. Do you feel safe with Mr. and Mrs. Bennett?" "Yes, sir." "Are you happy there?" "Happier than I've ever been. Mr. Bennett, Pa, he don't hit. He don't yell unless we do something really stupid. He teaches us things. And Ma, she makes it feel like—" Samuel's voice wavered. "Like we matter. Like we're not just kids nobody wanted. We're their kids." "Thomas." Morrison looked at the younger boy. "What about you?" Thomas clutched his rock. "I like it there. Pa lets me collect rocks and Ma teaches me their names. And nobody makes fun of me for being scared. They just let me be scared until I'm not anymore." "Nora." The girl stood cradling her splinted arm. "Ma set my arm when it broke. Could have just bandaged it and hoped. But she set it proper, even though it hurt me and hurt her to do it. That's love, isn't it? Doing the hard thing because it's right." Tears streaked her face. "Please don't take us away. We've been taken away so many times. We're tired of being taken away." "And Lahi?" Morrison's voice gentled. "Can you tell me anything?" The little girl looked at Aneth, who nodded encouragement. Lahi stood on shaky legs. "Home," she said, just like she'd said to Henshaw. But then she added more words, carefully pronounced, "They're my home. Please don't take my home." The courtroom was silent, except for muffled crying from some of the townspeople. Morrison sat back, steepling his fingers. "Mr. Pruitt, your concerns are noted. However, I see before me 4 articulate children who clearly feel secure and loved. I see a community willing to stand behind this family. And I see legal adoption papers properly filed with genuine intent." He paused. "Mrs. Bennett, stand, please." Aneth stood, legs shaking. "You married Mr. Bennett 5 days before Mr. Pruitt's initial visit. That timing is suspicious. I need you to tell me truthfully, is this marriage genuine, or is it a legal maneuver to secure custody?" Aneth's mouth went dry. This was it, the moment everything hinged on. She could feel Colt's eyes on her, the children's hope, Pruitt's expectation that she'd crumble. "Your Honor, I married Colt Bennett because those 4 children needed me to. That's the truth. It started as a legal arrangement, a way to protect them from a system that wanted to tear them apart." Her voice steadied. "But somewhere between agreeing to marry him and standing in this courtroom, it became real. Not because we fell in love like a fairy tale, but because we built something together. We became a family, messy and imperfect and completely genuine. So yes, the timing was strategic. But the commitment, that's as real as it gets." Morrison studied her face for a long moment. Then he looked at Colt. "Mr. Bennett, do you concur with your wife's assessment?" Colt stood. "Yes, sir. We married for the kids. But somewhere along the way we married for each other too. She's the best thing that's happened to this family, and I'd marry her again tomorrow for no reason except wanting to." Aneth's heart stopped. That wasn't part of any script they'd discussed. That was just truth spoken plainly in a room full of people. Morrison nodded slowly. "I'm going to take a 15-minute recess. When I return, I'll issue my decision. Everyone remain in the courtroom." He disappeared into his chambers, leaving chaos behind. People whispered, speculated. The children clustered around Aneth and Colt, seeking reassurance no one could provide. "Did we do good?" Thomas asked anxiously. "Did we say the right things? You said true things." Aneth told him. "That's all that matters." But she wasn't sure it was enough. She'd seen judges rule against sense and compassion before seen families torn apart by letter of law instead of spirit. Her hands shook, and she pressed them together, praying without words, because all her words had been used up. Colt took her hand. "Whatever happens, don't say it. I can't." She stopped, breathless. "I can't survive losing them. I thought I could, but I can't." "You won't have to. You can't know that. I know we fought. That counts for something." 15 minutes stretched into eternity. Finally, Morrison returned, expression grave. Everyone stood. "I've considered all testimony and evidence presented," he said. "This case is unusual in many respects. However, unusual doesn't necessarily mean wrong." He looked directly at the children. "Samuel, Thomas, Nora, Lahi, I've heard your voices. That's not something courts do often enough, and it's something I intend to change. Your testimony carries weight with me." Aneth couldn't breathe. "That said," Morrison continued, "I have concerns. The speed of this marriage, the lack of formal oversight during the children's time with Mr. Bennett, the question of whether Mrs. Bennett's previous losses affect her judgment." Pruitt's expression turned smug. "However," Morrison said firmly, "I also see evidence that these concerns are outweighed by the reality of this family. I see healthy, articulate children who know their own minds. I see a community standing behind them. And I see two adults willing to fight for children who aren't biologically theirs." He paused. "Therefore, I'm granting the adoption petition." The courtroom erupted. Aneth heard nothing over the roaring in her ears, felt nothing except Colt's arm around her, and children pressing against them from all sides, everyone crying and laughing simultaneously. "Order!" Morrison's gavel banged. "I'm not finished. The adoption is granted, but with conditions. Mr. Henshaw will conduct monthly visits for the next 6 months to ensure continued adequate care. Any evidence of abuse, neglect, or instability will result in immediate review and potential reversal. Additionally, Mrs. Bennett will submit quarterly reports on the children's educational progress. These children are being given a chance. Don't make me regret it." "We won't, Your Honor," Colt managed. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Thank your children for speaking up and your community for standing with you. And thank your wife for having the courage to risk her heart again." Morrison gathered his papers. "This family is legally recognized as of today. Congratulations." Aneth couldn't stop crying. She held Lahi and Nora, while Thomas wrapped himself around her legs, and Samuel tried to act like he wasn't crying, even though his face was soaked. Colt stood behind them, all one hand on Samuel's shoulder, looking dazed. People crowded around Martha, hugging everyone. Doc Hartley, shaking Colt's hand. Reverend Walsh, blessing them, in a voice thick with emotion. Even some of the townspeople they barely knew wanted to offer congratulations. Pruitt left without a word, his supervisor looking uncomfortable but resigned. Outside, the afternoon sun had never looked brighter. They stood on the courthouse steps as a family, legal, now recognized, now real, in ways that mattered to judges and laws and official documents. "Can we go home now?" Lahi asked. Yes, sweetheart, Aneth said. We can go home. Home. The word had never meant so much. The ride home felt different than every other journey they'd made to town. The same dirt road, the same wagon wheels creaking, the same horses pulling steady and sure. But everything had changed. Samuel sat taller. Thomas didn't hide his face when they passed other travelers. Nora hummed something tuneless and happy. Lahi fell asleep against Aneth's shoulder, dead weight and complete trust. We're really keeping them, Colt said quietly, like saying it too loud might break the spell. They're really ours. They were always ours, Aneth replied. Now the world knows it too. When they pulled into the ranch yard, the sun was starting its descent toward the mountains. The house looked the same as when they'd left it that morning, weathered wood, simple lines. Nothing fancy. But it looked different too, somehow. Like it knew what it was now. Not just a house. A home. Their home. The children tumbled out of the wagon, energy returning now that fear had released its grip. Samuel whooped and ran toward the barn. Thomas followed, laughing. Nora helped Lahi down carefully, and the little girl immediately started picking wildflowers from the yard. I should start dinner, Aneth said, but she didn't move. Just stood there watching her children legal and official and permanent, being young and careless and safe. Dinner can wait. Colt took her hand. Come here. He led her to the porch steps, and they sat together, hands still linked, watching the children play. The autumn air carried the smell of hay and distant smoke from someone's chimney. A hawk circled overhead, hunting. Life continuing like it always did, except now their place in it was secured. I keep waiting to wake up, Aneth admitted. To find out this was a dream, and we're still waiting for the judge's decision. It's real. We made it real. You made it real. Standing up in that courtroom telling them about Lahi and the government schools. I thought Morrison would hold you in contempt. I thought so too, but some things need saying, consequences be damned. Colt squeezed her hand. What you said, though, about our marriage becoming real, did you mean that? Aneth's heart kicked against her ribs. I wouldn't have said it under oath if I didn't mean it. So we're not just partners anymore. Not just two people protecting kids. She turned to look at him fully. His face was open, vulnerable, in a way she'd rarely seen. This man who'd faced down lawmen and judges, who'd survived war and loss, looked terrified of her answer. I don't know what we are, she said honestly. But we're more than we were. And I think we could be more still if we wanted. If we let ourselves. I want. The words came out rough. I've wanted for weeks, but didn't think I had the right. This started as arrangement, and you didn't sign up for anything beyond that. People change. Situations change. Aneth's voice steadied. I came here broken, Colt, convinced I had nothing left to give. You showed me that was wrong. Those children showed me. And now I'm standing here legally married to a man I respect and care about, and I'm thinking maybe broken pieces can fit together in new ways. Maybe that's allowed. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles. Simple gesture, but it sent heat flooding through her. We take it slow, no pressure. We're already married, already parents. Everything else we figure it out as we go. Slow sounds good. Mapa. Thomas came running. Can we have a celebration, like a real party? What kind of party? Colt asked. I don't know. Cake, music. Something special, because we're a real family now. Aneth laughed. We don't have cake ingredients, sweetheart. But we could make something special for dinner. Maybe tomorrow we ride to town and get supplies for a proper celebration. Can we invite people like Miss Martha and Doc Hartley and everyone who helped us? That's actually a wonderful idea. Aneth stood, mind already planning. A week from now, once we've settled, we'll have a gathering. Thank everyone properly. The children embraced this plan with enthusiasm that lasted all of 10 minutes before they got distracted by evening chores and the cat having kittens in the barn. But the idea stuck. A celebration. A way to mark this moment, this shift from uncertain to permanent. That night after the children were finally asleep, Thomas clutching his adoption papers like a treasure, Nora whispering the new name to herself. Nora Bennett. Nora Bennett. Aneth found herself too restless to sleep. She stepped outside and found Colt already there sitting on the porch rail. "Can't settle either," she asked. "Keep thinking I'll hear hoofbeats. Pruitt coming back to say there was a mistake." There was no mistake. Morrison signed the papers himself. We watched him do it. I know, but fear doesn't listen to logic. He shifted to make room for her beside him. You ever get used to happiness? Or does it always feel like something that might get snatched away? I don't know. I haven't had enough practice at being happy. Aneth leaned against his shoulder, testing this new closeness. He didn't pull away. Instead, his arm came around her waist, anchoring her there. But maybe we learn together. Maybe that's part of figuring out what we are. They sat like that until the cold drove them inside, and when they separated to go to their respective rooms, Colt caught her hand one more time. Aneth, I'm glad you answered my advertisement. So am I. Even though it's been hard. Especially because it's been hard. Easy things don't change you. Hard things make you into someone new. She squeezed his hand. Good night, Colt. Good night. The next morning brought Mr. Henshaw for his first monthly inspection. The children tensed when they saw his official wagon, old fears surging back despite yesterday's victory. Samuel's jaw went tight. Thomas hid behind Nora. Lahi pressed against Aneth's legs. It's all right, Aneth assured them. He's just checking in. That's his job. He's not taking anyone anywhere. You sure? Samuel asked. Positive. Judge Morrison said monthly visits for 6 months. This is the first one. After that, we're done. Henshaw approached with his same neutral expression, carrying a leather folder. Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Bennett, children, may I come in? Of course. Colt held the door open. Inside, Henshaw pulled out forms and a pencil. This won't take long, just routine questions. Children, are you being fed regularly? 4 heads nodded. Are you sleeping well? More nods, though. Samuel added. I still have nightmares sometimes, but that's not their fault. That's just me. Understandable. Nightmares are normal after trauma. Henshaw made notes. Mrs. Bennett, your continuing educational instruction. Yes, every morning, sometimes afternoons too. They're all progressing well. Samuel's nearly ready for advanced arithmetic. Thomas is reading at grade level now. Nora's excelling in natural sciences. And Lahi, learning her letters, speaking more each day. Aneth kept her voice steady, professional. She's 4 years old and has been through more than most adults. We're letting her heal at her own pace. Henshaw nodded, writing. May I see their sleeping arrangements? They showed him the children's room. 4 small beds lined up neatly, each with a trunk for personal belongings. Simple but clean. Evidence of care in the mended quilts and the wildflowers Nora had arranged in a jar. And your living situation? Henshaw looked between Aneth and Colt. You're sharing quarters. Aneth felt her face heat. My room is off the kitchen, close to the children in case they need me at night. But you are cohabitating as husband and wife. We're married, Colt said flatly. However we arrange our private life is our business, long as the kids are cared for. Fair enough. Henshaw made more notes. I'm required to assess whether this adoption is being maintained in good faith or whether the marriage was solely for legal purposes. It was for legal purposes, Aneth said honestly. Initially. But marriage has a way of becoming real regardless of why it started. We're committed to each other and to these children. That's what matters. Henshaw studied them both for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. "Mrs. Bennet, I've been doing this work for 15 years. I've seen every kind of family arrangement you can imagine. What I've learned is that love matters more than paperwork, and what I see here is love." He closed his folder. "My report will reflect that everything is satisfactory. I'll return next month, but I don't anticipate any problems." After he left, the children released their held breath collectively. Samuel sagged against the table. Thomas started crying with relief. Nora just laughed high and slightly hysterical. "One down," Colt said. "5 more visits, then we're clear." "We can do 5 more, Aneth said. "We can do anything now." Planning the celebration gave them all something positive to focus on. They decided on the following Saturday, enough time to prepare, but not so far away that anticipation turned to anxiety. Aneth made lists food to prepare people to invite chores to finish beforehand. The children threw themselves into preparations with fierce joy. Samuel and Colt built extra benches from scrap lumber. Thomas and Nora picked wildflowers and wove them into garlands. Lahi practiced a song Nora had been teaching her, something about birds and sunshine, simple words she could manage. Aneth baked bread until her arms ached. She made pies from preserved fruit cookies from their precious sugar stores. Martha contributed a ham. Mrs. Chen brought rice and vegetables. Doc Hartley donated a bottle of good whiskey for the adults to toast with proper. Saturday arrived bright and cool. People started showing up around noon. Neighbors from miles around, townspeople who'd stood up in court, even Judge Morrison himself, looking less severe without his robes. "Wanted to see how you were settling," he told Aneth, "and to eat some of that pie I've been hearing about." The yard filled with voices and laughter. Someone brought a fiddle. Someone else had a harmonica. Impromptu music started up, and children, not just theirs, but others from neighboring ranches, ran wild, playing tag and climbing trees. Aneth moved through it all in a daze of gratitude. These people had come, had celebrated with them, had made this strange, cobbled-together family feel legitimate and real. She was checking on food when Martha found her. "You did good, dear. Real good." "We got lucky. Judge Morrison could have gone the other way." "Luck had nothing to do with it. You fought. That's what made the difference." Martha squeezed her arm. "And between you and me, you and Colt are going to be just fine. I see the way he looks at you when he thinks nobody's watching." "We're taking it slow." "Slow's smart, but don't take too slow. Hear me. Life's short, love's rare. When you find both, you grab on with both hands." Later, as the sun started sinking, Reverend Walsh called for attention. "I'd like to say a few words, if I may." He waited for quiet. "We're gathered here to celebrate a family. Not a traditional family by some measures. But the best families rarely are traditional. They're the ones built on choice, on commitment, on love that persists despite difficulty." He raised his glass. "To the Bennets, may your home always be full of laughter, your table never empty, and your love for each other grow stronger with each passing year." "To the Bennets," everyone echoed. Aneth felt Colt's hand find hers under the table. She squeezed back, overwhelmed by the rightness of this moment. Her children were playing with other children, their laughter carrying on the wind. Her neighbors had become her friends. Her convenient marriage was becoming something real and precious. As evening settled in and people started heading home, Samuel approached with Thomas and the girls trailing behind. "Mapa, can we talk to you?" They sat together away from the remaining guests. 4 serious young faces looked at them. "We wanted to say thank you," Samuel started. "For fighting for us, for not giving up even when it was hard." "You don't need to thank us," Colt began. "Yes, we do." Samuel's voice was firm. "We know what you risked, what you both gave up to keep us. Ma, you married someone you barely knew. Pa, you could have lost everything if the judge went against you, but you did it anyway. For us." "You're worth it," Aneth said simply. "All of you. Every sacrifice, Every hard moment. Worth it. We want to do something for you, Nora added. Something to show we're grateful. What did you have in mind? Thomas produced a folded paper from his pocket. We wrote something. A promise. Can we read it? Of course. Samuel took the paper, cleared his throat. We, the children of the Bennett family, make this promise. We promise to work hard and learn everything you teach us. We promise to help each other and not fight too much. We promise to remember that family isn't about blood. It's about choosing to stay even when things are hard. We promise to make you proud. And we promise to love you forever, even when we're grown and gone, because you loved us first when nobody else would. His voice cracked on the last words. Aneth couldn't see through her tears, couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. Beside her, Colt wasn't doing much better. That's the best gift anyone's ever given me, he managed finally. Thank you. We mean it, Thomas said earnestly. Every word. We know you do, sweetheart. We know. After the children went to bed that night, exhausted from excitement and celebration, Aneth and Colt sat together on the porch steps, watching stars emerge. Today was perfect, she said. Everything I didn't know I wanted. It was good. He paused. Aneth, I need to tell you something. Her stomach clenched. What? When I said in court that I'd marry you again tomorrow for no reason except wanting to, I meant it. This stopped being convenient a long time ago, at least for me. When? The question came out whispered. That first night when you set Nora's arm, watching you be strong and gentle at the same time, seeing how much you cared, even though you'd only known her a few weeks, something shifted. And then every day after watching you with them, watching you become their mother, in every way that matters. He turned to face her. I know we said slow. I know we said partners. But Aneth, I'm in love with you. Have been for a while. And I needed you to know even if you're not there yet. Even if you never get there. Aneth's heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. You love me. Yeah, I do. Even though I can't give you children of your own blood. I don't want children of my own blood. I want those 4 sleeping in that house. And I want you. Just you exactly as you are. She thought about her first husband, who'd looked at her like she was defective. Who'd left because she couldn't be what he needed. And now, here was Colt saying he loved her, not despite her limitations, but because of everything she was. I'm scared, she admitted. Terrified, actually. Last time I loved someone, it destroyed me. I know. And I'm not asking you to say it back. I'm just asking you to let me love you. Let me show you that not all love ends in pain. What if I can't? What if I'm too broken? You're not broken. You're cautious. That's smart. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, touch gentle. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. She leaned into his touch, letting herself trust this warmth. Ask me again in a month. Maybe I'll have an answer then. I'll ask you every month for the rest of our lives, if that's what it takes. They sat there in comfortable silence, and Aneth let herself imagine a future where this was normal, where love wasn't something that got snatched away, but something that grew steady and strong, where broken people healed together instead of breaking each other further. Maybe, just maybe. The weeks that followed settled into new rhythms. Henshaw came for his second inspection and found everything satisfactory. The children thrived. Samuel shot up 2 inches and needed new pants. Thomas's reading improved dramatically. Nora started teaching Lahi basic arithmetic, and Lahi's nightmares decreased in frequency. And Aneth and Colt circled each other like dancers learning new steps. He'd brush her hand passing the coffee pot. She'd rest her fingers on his shoulder while reaching for something on a high shelf. Small touches building comfort and familiarity. One evening, Aneth was mending clothes by lamplight when Colt sat down across from her. Samuel wants to learn blacksmithing. Murphy offered to take him on 2 days a week. Teach him the trade. That's wonderful. He'd be good at it. Yeah, but it means leaving him in town twice a week, trusting someone else with him. Aneth set down her sewing. We can't keep them locked up here forever. They need to learn to grow to have lives beyond this ranch. I know. Doesn't make it easier. Nothing about parenting is easy. We're just figuring that out later than most. She smiled. Tell Samuel yes. Let him try. If it doesn't work out, he comes back. But if it does, we've helped him find his path. You're good at this, knowing when to hold on and when to let go. I'm terrible at it. I want to keep them all close forever, but I'm trying to be better than my fears. Colt reached across and took her hand. You're the best thing that's happened to this family, Aneth Bennett. I hope you know that. I'm starting to believe it. Winter came creeping in. The first snow fell in November, light and magical. The children ran outside to catch flakes on their tongues while Aneth and Colt watched from the porch. First snow as a complete family, Colt said, feels significant. Everything feels significant now, like we're building memories instead of just surviving days. Is that what we were doing before, just surviving? I was. After my first marriage ended, I just existed, taught other people's children, and went home to an empty room and convinced myself that was enough. She leaned against him, letting his warmth seep into her bones. But it wasn't. I was starving and didn't even know it. And now I'm full. Sometimes so full it scares me because I know what it's like to be empty again. He kissed the top of her head, casual as breathing. They'd gotten comfortable with these small intimacies, though they still kept separate rooms, still moved carefully around the bigger questions. December brought the third inspection from Henshaw. He spent less time questioning, more time observing. Watched Aneth teach a lesson on Wyoming geography, using Thomas's rock collection. Watched Colt patiently help Samuel repair a saddle. Watched Nora read to Lahi from a picture book. You've built something good here, he told them before leaving. Really good. Judge Morrison will be pleased with my reports. How many more visits? Samuel asked after Henshaw left. 3. March, April, May. Then we're done with inspections forever. Good. I like Mr. Henshaw fine, but I'm tired of being watched. Me too, son. Me too. Christmas arrived, and with it, a question Aneth hadn't anticipated. Ma? Nora asked while they were baking. Do we do Christmas presents? I don't know. Do you want to? I don't know what Pa would want, or you, or the boys, or Lahi. I never had to think about presents before. Aneth set down her rolling pin. How about we make presents things from the heart instead of store-bought? Like what? I could teach you embroidery. You could make Pa a handkerchief with his initials. Samuel could carve something for Thomas from that wood he's been collecting. Thomas could paint rocks for everyone. You know how proud he is of his rock art. And Lahi could draw pictures. What about you and Pa? What would you make? Good question. Aneth thought about it. I could make new shirts for the boys, they're both growing so fast. And maybe something special for you and Lahi. What about for Pa? What do you think he needs? Nora considered this seriously. He needs to smile more. He's happy now, but he still forgets sometimes that it's okay to be happy. Can you make something that reminds him? Aneth's throat tightened. I'll try, sweetheart. I'll try. She settled on a quilt. Spent her evenings after the children slept piecing together fabric scraps, bits from outgrown clothes, remnants from mending projects, even a piece of her own wedding dress. A quilt made from their life together, tangible proof of family, built from fragments. Christmas morning arrived cold and bright. They gathered around the fire, and the children presented their gifts with nervous pride. Samuel had carved a wooden bird for Thomas' wings spread in flight. Thomas had painted rocks for everyone, each one carefully decorated with patterns and symbols. Nora's embroidered handkerchief for Colt had his initials slightly crooked, but made with such care it was beautiful. Lahi gave everyone drawings, stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun. When Aneth presented the quilt, Colt just stared at it. It's made from us, she explained quietly. Pieces of our life here. So you remember that happiness isn't something you have to apologize for. He pulled her into his arms right there in front of the children and held her like she was something precious. "Thank you," he said roughly. "For this. For everything." "Pa's crying," Thomas whispered. "Those are good tears," Nora assured him. "The best kind." That night, after celebration and too much food and the children finally asleep, Colt found Aneth on the porch again. Their place now where they talked through hard things and good things and everything between. "I love you," he said without preamble. "It's been a month. You said ask again in a month." "I did say that. So I'm asking. Not asking you to say it back. Just asking if you'll let me keep loving you." Aneth turned to face him fully. "I've been thinking about love, about what it means. My first husband loved me, or thought he did when I was perfect and useful. When I could give him what he wanted. That love was conditional. It had an expiration date I just didn't see coming." She took his hands. "But you've seen me at my worst. You've seen me broken and scared and failing, and you stayed. That's different. That's real. Does that mean—" "It means I love you too. I've probably loved you since you said those 4 words in the kitchen. I've got enough kids for both of us. Like my biggest failure was just irrelevant instead of defining. I've been too scared to say it out loud, but I'm tired of being scared." He kissed her, then properly kissed her for the first time since their formal peck in the courthouse. This was different, searching, promising, claiming. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "So we're doing this for real. We've been doing this for real. Now we're just admitting it. My room or yours?" She laughed breathlessly. "Neither. Not yet. Slow. Remember." "How slow?" "Slow enough that when we finally do, it's because we can't stand to be apart anymore. Not because we think we should or because it's expected. Because we need it. I need it now." "Not quite enough. Soon, though. I promise." They stayed on the porch long into the night, holding each other, planning a future that had stopped being hypothetical and started being real. And when they finally separated to their separate rooms, it felt less like distance and more like anticipation. Something was building between them. Something inevitable and right. Soon, Aneth thought as she lay in bed. Very soon. January brought the kind of cold that made your bones ache and your breath freeze in the air. Aneth woke one morning to find ice crystals on the inside of her window and Lahi standing in her doorway, shivering in her nightgown. "Bad dream?" Aneth asked, lifting the blankets in invitation. Lahi nodded and climbed in, pressing her cold feet against Aneth's legs. They lay there together, while pale dawn light crept across the floor, and Aneth thought about how normal this had become, a child seeking comfort. A mother providing it. Simple, essential, real. "Ma," Lahi's voice was small in the quiet. "Are you and Pa gonna have a baby?" Aneth's breath caught. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart?" "Nora said married people have babies. But you've been married a long time now, and there's no baby." How did you explain adult complexities to a 4-year-old? Aneth chose simple truth. "Some married people have babies, some don't. Pa and I are happy with you and your brothers and sister. We don't need anything else." "But what if you want a baby that's really yours?" "Lahi, look at me." Aneth waited until the girl's dark eyes met hers. "You are really mine. All of you are. My body might not have made you, but my heart did. That's what matters. Promise?" "Promise." Lahi settled back against her, satisfied. They stayed there until breakfast sounds started in the kitchen. Colt moving around, starting coffee, probably burning something because he always burned the first batch of flapjacks. When Aneth emerged with Lahi, she found the kitchen in cheerful chaos. Thomas had spilled flour trying to help. Samuel was arguing with Nora about the proper way to set a table. And Colt stood at the stove with a sheepish expression and a pan of charred flapjacks. "Don't say it," he warned. "Say what?" "That you burn breakfast every single morning." "I don't burn it every morning." "Name one morning you didn't burn something." He opened his mouth, closed it, then grinned. "Can't. but I keep trying. That you do. She moved to help, brushing past him close enough that their shoulders touched. Small contact, but it sent warmth through her that had nothing to do with the stove. After breakfast, while the children did their morning chores, Colt pulled Aneth aside. Need to talk to you about something. Her stomach clenched. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Just got a letter from the territorial office. They're sending someone in March for a final evaluation. One more inspection beyond Henshaw's visits. If we pass, the adoption is permanent with no more oversight. That's good news. Yeah, but it's also the last hurdle. The last chance for them to find something wrong and take it all back. Aneth took his hands. Then we make sure there's nothing wrong to find. We keep doing what we're doing, loving these children, building our family, being honest about who we are. That's all we can do. What if it's not enough? It will be. It has to be. She squeezed his hands. We've come too far to fail now. But fear had wormed its way in, and over the following weeks it manifested in small ways. Colt became hyper-vigilant about chores being done perfectly. Aneth pushed the children harder in their lessons. Everyone felt the pressure, though nobody talked about it directly. Until Samuel exploded. It was a Tuesday morning in late January. Aneth was teaching arithmetic, and Samuel kept making mistakes, simple ones he'd mastered months ago. After the fifth error, she made him redo the entire problem set. This is stupid, he muttered. Excuse me. I said this is stupid. I already know how to do this. Why do I have to prove it over and over? Because practice makes. Because you're scared. Samuel stood knocking over his slate. You're scared the inspector's gonna come and decide we're not good enough, so you're making us be perfect all the time. But we're not perfect. We're just kids. The other children had gone very still. Aneth felt her face heat. Samuel, that's not... It is you and Pa both always watching everything we do, making sure we don't mess up. Well, guess what? I'm gonna mess up. Thomas is gonna mess up. We're kids, and kids mess up, and if some stupid inspector can't see that we're still a good family anyway, then maybe we don't want to be in this family. He ran outside, slamming the door behind him. In the silence that followed, Thomas started crying quietly. Nora put an arm around him. Lahi looked at Aneth with wide, scared eyes. Is Samuel right? Nora asked quietly. Are you scared of the inspector? Aneth sank into a chair. No point lying now. Yes. I'm terrified. We've worked so hard to build this family, and the thought of losing it, losing any of you, makes me want to do everything perfectly so nobody can find fault. But you're making us scared too, Nora said. When you're scared, we're scared, and then nobody's happy anymore. You're right. I'm sorry. Aneth looked at each of their faces. I've been so focused on proving we're a good family that I forgot to actually be one. That stops now. What about Samuel? Thomas asked. Is he in trouble? No. He told the truth. That's never something to punish. Aneth stood. Finish your lessons however you can. Don't worry about perfect. I need to go talk to your brother. She found Samuel behind the barn throwing rocks at a fence post with angry precision. Each rock hit dead center, and she realized he was crying while he threw. Can I sit? She asked. He shrugged, which she took as permission. They sat in cold dirt while he kept throwing, working through his anger one rock at a time. You were right, Aneth said finally. About everything. I have been scared, and I've been making everyone else scared too. That's not fair. You're not going to send me away for yelling. For being honest, never, though you could work on your delivery. Samuel almost smiled. Almost. I don't want to be perfect. I just want to be me. Then be you. Messy, loud, imperfect you. That's who we love. What if the inspector doesn't think messy is good enough? Then the inspector is wrong, and we'll fight that decision just like we fought all the others. But Samuel, I need you to understand something. This family isn't conditional. You don't have to earn your place here by being perfect. You already have your place, mistakes and all. He finally looked at her, eyes red and face streaked with tears and dirt. "I'm sorry I yelled. I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to be perfect." She opened her arms and he crashed into them, letting her hold him while he cried properly. 11 years old and trying so hard to be tough, but still a child who needed comfort. When they went back inside, Colt was there. The children had apparently filled him in, and he looked as chagrined as Aneth felt. "Family meeting," he announced. "Everyone sit." They gathered around the table, all 6 of them, and Colt cleared his throat. "Your ma and I owe you an apology. We've been so worried about proving we're a good family that we forgot to actually be one. That changes now. From now on, we focus on being ourselves, messy, imperfect, real. And if some inspector doesn't like it, that's their problem, not ours." "But what if they take us away?" Thomas asked. "Then we fight. But we don't change who we are out of fear. We don't make ourselves smaller to fit someone else's expectations." Colt looked at each child. "You're my kids, not because a judge said so, but because I choose you every single day. And that's not going to change no matter what any inspector thinks." "We choose you too," Nora said softly. "Even when you're annoying and worried and making us practice arithmetic too much." Aneth laughed wetly. "Fair enough." They spent the rest of that day deliberately being imperfect. Burned lunch and nobody cared. Let Thomas read at his own pace instead of pushing. Let Samuel work on blacksmithing plans instead of schoolwork. Let Nora and Lahi make a mess with paint. And at dinner, when Lahi spilled her milk all over the table, instead of rushing to clean it, they all just sat there and laughed. That night, in their spot on the porch, Colt pulled Aneth close. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For being brave enough to admit you were scared. For showing the kids it's okay to be human." He kissed her temple. "You're a good mother, Aneth Bennett. I'm learning to be. We both are. Think we'll ever feel like we know what we're doing? God, I hope not. The day we think we've figured it out is probably the day we stop trying." He laughed, and the sound of it warmed her from the inside out. This was what family sounded like. Not perfection. Just people loving each other through the mess. February brought a crisis of a different kind. Aneth woke one morning to find Nora's bed empty. Panic hit immediately. Where was she? Why hadn't she said anything? But then Aneth heard retching from outside and found the girl behind the house vomiting into the dirt. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" "Don't know. Been feeling sick for a few days, but didn't want to say anything. Thought it would pass." Nora heaved again, and Aneth held her hair back, mind racing through possibilities. When the sickness finally subsided, Aneth helped Nora back inside and made her lie down. She felt the girl's forehead hot. Too hot. "Colt," she called. "I need you." He came running, took one look at Nora's flushed face and glassy eyes, and his expression went grim. "How long has she been sick?" "A few days, she says. She hid it." "Didn't want to worry you," Nora mumbled. "Inspector's coming soon. Didn't want to cause problems." Aneth's heart clenched. Even after their conversation about being imperfect, Nora had been so worried about seeming like a burden that she'd hidden illness. What kind of message had they been sending? "We're going for Doc Hartley," Colt decided. "Now." "I'll go," Aneth said. "Faster on horseback alone. You stay with her and the other children." She rode faster than was safe, pushing the horse hard through February cold. When she burst into Doc Hartley's office, he took one look at her face and started gathering supplies. "Tell me," he said. "Nora. Fever. Vomiting. She's been hiding it for days." "Damn fool child." But his voice was fond. "Let's go." Back at the ranch, Hartley examined Nora thoroughly, while the rest of them waited in tense silence. Samuel paced. Thomas cried quietly. Lahi sat in Aneth's lap, trembling. Finally, Hartley emerged from the bedroom. "It's influenza. Bad case, but not the worst I've seen. She needs rest fluids and careful monitoring. The fever's got to break within 48 hours, or we're looking at complications." "What kind of complications?" Colt asked. "Pneumonia, brain fever, things that kill children." Hartley's expression was serious. "I'm not trying to scare you, but you need to know the stakes. The next 2 days are critical." Aneth felt her world tilt. "What do we do?" "Cool cloths for the fever, broth if she can keep it down, someone with her at all times, and pray. Never hurts to pray." They set up shifts. Aneth took the first watch, sitting beside Nora's bed with a basin of cool water and clean cloths. The girl drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes delirious. "Ma," she mumbled during a lucid moment. "Am I gonna die?" "No, baby. You're going to be fine." "Promise." Aneth wanted to promise. Wanted to guarantee that nothing bad would happen, that love could protect against illness and fear and death. But she'd learned that promises you couldn't keep were worse than no promises at all. "I promise I'll fight for you with everything I have. I promise I won't leave your side. And I promise that whatever happens, you're loved. So completely loved." Nora's hand found hers. "Love you too, Ma." When Colt came to take over the watch at midnight, he found Aneth still there, exhausted and refusing to leave. "You need rest," he said gently. "I can't. What if she needs something? What if— Then I'll be here. Aneth, you can't help her if you collapse from exhaustion." He pulled her to her feet. "Go, sleep for a few hours. I've got her." She forced herself to leave to lie down in her own bed, but sleep wouldn't come. She kept seeing Nora's flushed face, kept hearing the rasp of her breathing, kept thinking that they'd survive judges and inspections and legal battles, only to potentially lose her to something as simple and devastating as fever. Sometime around 3 in the morning, she gave up on sleep and went back to Nora's room. Colt looked up from where he sat holding the girl's hand. "Couldn't stay away?" he asked. "Not while she's fighting." Aneth sat on the other side of the bed. "We're supposed to protect them. That's the whole point. And I can't protect her from this. Neither can I. Some things are beyond our control. I hate that. I hate feeling helpless. I know, but sometimes being helpless is part of loving someone. You stay anyway, even when you can't fix it. You hold their hand through the dark, and hope morning comes." They sat vigil together through the long hours before dawn. Nora's fever climbed higher, and she started thrashing, caught in delirious dreams. They held her down gently, changed sweat-soaked sheets, whispered reassurances she probably couldn't hear. Samuel appeared in the doorway around 5, looking small and scared in his nightshirt. "Is she gonna die?" he asked bluntly. "Not if we can help it," Colt said. "Can I sit with her? I'll be quiet." "Come here, son." Samuel climbed onto the bed, careful not to jostle Nora, and took her other hand. "You gotta fight," he told his sister. "You hear me? You're strong. You're the strongest person I know. So you fight and you win and you come back to us." By the time the other children woke, they'd all migrated to Nora's room. Thomas sat on the floor by the bed. Lahi curled up in Aneth's lap. All of them waiting, hoping, praying in their own ways. Doc Hartley came back at noon to check on her. His expression was grave. "Fever's still climbing, if it doesn't break soon." He trailed off, but they all understood. "What else can we do?" Aneth asked desperately. "What you're doing. Be here. Love her. Sometimes that matters more than medicine." The afternoon stretched into evening. Nora's breathing grew more labored. Her skin burned like fire, and Aneth sat there holding her daughter's hand, whispering every prayer she'd ever learned and making up new ones. "Please, please, not her. Not after everything. Please." Colt brought her water she didn't drink and food she couldn't eat. The children took turns sitting vigil, each one telling Nora something, a memory, a hope, a reason to fight. Even tiny Lahi whispered, "Come back. We need you." Night fell again. The second night. The critical night. If the fever didn't break by morning, Aneth couldn't finish that thought. Around midnight, Nora started convulsing. Her whole body seized and Aneth screamed for Colt. He held the girl's shoulders while Aneth tried to keep her from biting her tongue, and for long, terrifying minutes they thought they were losing her. Then, as suddenly as it started, the convulsions stopped. Nora went limp and still, and for one horrible moment, Aneth thought she'd died. But then she felt breath faint, but there. "Get Doc Hartley," Colt said roughly. "Now." Aneth ran, pounded on the doctor's door until he answered bleary and confused. "She's seizing. Come now." By the time they got back to the ranch, the crisis had passed. Nora lay still and pale but breathing. Hartley examined her carefully. "Fever's breaking," he said finally. "See, her skin's cooling. The worst is over." Aneth's legs gave out. She sank to the floor beside the bed and sobbed great wrenching sobs of relief and exhaustion and residual terror. Colt knelt beside her, pulling her into his arms while she fell apart. "She's okay," he murmured. "She's okay." "I know, me too, but she made it. She's strong." By morning, Nora's fever had broken completely. She woke confused and weak, but alive. So beautifully, miraculously alive. "What happened?" she asked groggily. "You got very sick," Aneth said, still holding her hand like she might disappear. "But you fought through it. You're going to be fine now." "Everyone's here." Nora looked around at her family crowded into the small room. "Were you all here the whole time?" "Where else would we be?" Samuel said gruffly. "You're our sister." "Oh." Tears leaked from Nora's eyes. "I'm sorry I worried you." "Don't be sorry for being sick," Colt said firmly. "Just be sorry if you ever hide it again. We're family. We face hard things together." It took 2 weeks for Nora to fully recover. During that time, the whole household moved at her pace, quiet when she needed rest, cheerful when she needed distraction. And Aneth watched her daughter slowly come back to herself and thought about how close they'd come to losing everything. The experience changed something in all of them, made them softer with each other, made them appreciate the ordinary moments, breakfast conversation, evening chores, bedtime stories, made them understand that family wasn't just about keeping children fed and safe. It was about weathering storms together and coming out changed but intact. March arrived with the territorial inspector. His name was Mr. Carlton, and he looked like someone who'd never smiled in his life. Stiff, formal, carrying a folder thick with papers and expectations. But the Bennetts were ready, not in the panicked, desperate way they'd been ready before. This time they were just themselves, a family that had survived illness and fear and near loss. A family that had nothing to prove because they already knew their worth. Carlton inspected everything, asked probing questions, watched how they interacted, interviewed each child separately, then together, examined their schoolwork, their living quarters, their food stores. He spent an entire day observing, making notes, revealing nothing. When he finally sat down with Aneth and Colt that evening, his expression was unreadable. "I've completed my evaluation," he said. Aneth's heart hammered. This was it, the final judgment. "Your family is unusual," Carlton continued. "Children from different backgrounds, different circumstances. A marriage that by all accounts started as convenience. Living conditions that are adequate but not luxurious. And yet," Colt prompted, "and yet I see something here that's increasingly rare. I see children who are genuinely happy, who trust the adults in their lives, who are thriving despite difficult pasts. I see two people who've committed themselves completely to these children's well-being. And I see love, messy, imperfect, but absolutely real." Aneth couldn't breathe. "My recommendation to the territorial office will be that this adoption be finalized with no further oversight required. The Bennett family has proven itself capable, committed, and genuine. You've done good work here." Relief hit so hard, Aneth thought she might faint. Beside her, Colt made a sound that might have been a laugh, or a sob, or both. "Thank you," he managed. "Don't thank me. Thank yourselves for building something worth protecting." Carlton stood. "My report will be filed within the week. You should receive final confirmation by April. Congratulations." After he left, they stood in the yard watching his wagon disappear down the road. Then Colt turned to Aneth and kissed her deep and desperate and full of joy and relief and love that had been building for months. "We did it," he said against her lips. "We actually did it. We did it." She kissed him back, not caring that children might be watching, not caring about anything except this moment. "They're ours. Really, truly ours." The children came flooding out, then having clearly been watching from the windows. Everyone talked at once, celebrating and laughing and crying. Samuel picked up Lahi and spun her around. Thomas grabbed Nora in a hug that made her squeak. And Aneth stood in the middle of it all thinking this. This was what she'd been searching for her whole life. Not perfection, just this. This beautiful, chaotic, completely imperfect love. That night, after the children were finally asleep, too excited to settle, but eventually worn down by their own joy, Colt found Aneth packing up the documents they'd accumulated over the months. Court papers, adoption files, inspection reports. Evidence of a battle fought and won. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Putting these away. We don't need them anymore. We're just a family now, not a family in progress." "Aneth." He turned her to face him. "Move into my room." Her breath caught. "What?" "Move into my room. Not because we have to anymore. Not for appearances or inspections, or any reason except that I love you, and I'm tired of sleeping alone when the woman I love is just down the hall." "Colt. If it's too fast, tell me. If you need more time, I'll wait. But if you're ready, if you want this too, then stop waiting for the perfect moment. We're past that. We're just us now building a life together. Let's build all of it." Aneth thought about the past months. The way they'd grown from strangers to partners to something deeper. The way he'd stood beside her through every crisis. The way he loved their children with fierce protective tenderness. The way he loved her not despite her perceived flaws, but because of everything she was. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll move into your room. I'll share your bed and your life, and everything that comes with it. Because I love you, Colt Bennett, and I'm tired of being careful with my heart." He kissed her then, and it was different from every other kiss. This one was a promise. A beginning. A choice to stop holding back and start living fully. That night, for the first time, they fell asleep tangled together. And when Aneth woke in the morning to find Colt's arm around her waist, and spring light streaming through the window, she thought about the woman who'd stepped off that supply wagon months ago. Broken. Hopeless. Convinced she had nothing left to give. She'd been so wrong. April brought the official letter. The adoption was finalized. No more inspections, no more oversight, no more proving themselves worthy. They were simply the Bennetts, Colt Aneth, Samuel Thomas, Nora, and Lahi. A family built on choice and sealed with love. They celebrated quietly, just the six of them. Made a special dinner, told stories, laughed until their stomachs hurt. And that night, when Aneth tucked each child into bed, she whispered the same thing to each one. "You're mine, forever mine. Nothing can change that now." May arrived with warmth and wildflowers. Aneth started a garden, vegetables and flowers mixed together in beautiful chaos. The children helped getting dirt under their nails and sun on their faces. Samuel split his time between the ranch and the blacksmith's shop, learning a trade that made him light up with pride. Thomas's rock collection had grown to over 50 specimens, each one carefully labeled and displayed. Nora read books at a voracious pace and started teaching Lahi more advanced lessons. And Lahi, precious Lahi, who'd been silent and scared, sang while she worked and laughed freely, and called them Ma and Pa without hesitation. One evening, while the children played after supper and the setting sun painted everything gold, Colt pulled Aneth aside. "Come with me. Want to show you something." He led her to the oak tree on the hill overlooking the ranch. Someone had built a bench there, rough but serviceable, made from the same wood Samuel used for his projects. Samuel made it, Colt confirmed. Said every family needs a spot for talking, somewhere parents can go when they need a minute. They sat together looking down at their home. Smoke curled from the chimney. Children's voices carried on the wind. Everything looked peaceful and right and exactly how it should be. "You ever think about how we got here?" Colt asked. "All the things that had to go wrong first to make this possible. Every day. If my first marriage hadn't failed, I never would have answered your advertisement. If you hadn't lost Emily, you might not have opened your home to unwanted children. If Samuel and Thomas and Nora and Lahi hadn't been abandoned or orphaned..." She stopped. Terrible things had to happen for this family to exist. Does that make us selfish? Being grateful for terrible things? No. It makes us human. We didn't cause those terrible things. We just built something good from the rubble. She leaned against him. Besides, I think the children would say it was worth it. All the pain that came before, it led them here. To safety. To love. To home. You really believe that? I do. And I think someday, when they're grown and gone, they'll look back and realize that the worst thing that ever happened to them led to the best thing. That's not selfish. That's redemption. Colt kissed her temple. You're a wise woman, Aneth Bennett. I'm a woman who's learned that broken things can be made whole in unexpected ways. She turned to face him. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. For seeing past what I couldn't do to what I could. For giving me a family when I thought that chance was gone forever. For loving me when I'd forgotten how to love myself. Aneth. Let me finish. My first husband told me I was broken. That I'd failed at the most basic thing a woman was supposed to do. And I believed him for so long. But you showed me that family isn't about biology. It's about showing up. It's about choosing love every single day, even when it's hard. You gave me 4 children who didn't come from my body, but who live in my heart like they always belonged there. And I need you to know, this is enough. More than enough. This is everything. He pulled her close, and they sat there as stars began appearing overhead. Their children's laughter drifted up from the house. Somewhere, a coyote howled. The wind carried the smell of growing things and possibility. I love you, Colt said simply. Not for what you've given me, but for who you are. Strong and stubborn and brave enough to risk your heart again. I love you. And I'm grateful every damn day that you stepped off that wagon and into our lives. I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes. Good scared or bad scared? Good scared. The kind that means something matters enough to be terrifying. They walked back to the house hand in hand as darkness settled in. Through the windows they could see their children getting ready for bed. Samuel helping Thomas find his nightshirt. Nora braiding Lahi's hair. All of them moving through routines that had become sacred through repetition. Inside, they tucked each child in with kisses and quiet words. Then they retreated to their own room, their shared room now, with 2 lives tangled together in ways that felt both new and ancient. That night, lying in bed with Colt's breathing steady beside her and moonlight silvering the floor, Aneth thought about the journey that had brought her here. Every loss, every failure, every moment she'd wanted to give up. They'd all been necessary. All led to this moment, this family, this love. She'd come to Wyoming believing her life was over. Believing she had nothing left to give, and nothing left to hope for. She'd been wrong about everything. Her life hadn't ended. It had been waiting to begin. And it had begun the moment a gruff cowboy looked at her biggest failure and said, "Good. I've got enough kids for both of us." Those words had changed everything. Had given her permission to stop seeing herself through the lens of what she couldn't do and start seeing what she could. Teacher, mother, wife, partner. Not despite her past losses, but alongside them. carrying them but not defined by them. She reached out in the darkness and found Colt's hand. He squeezed back, half asleep, but present. Always present. This was enough. This was everything. This was home. And in the morning, when the sun rose over their ranch and their children woke to another ordinary precious day, Aneth would rise too. Would make breakfast, and teach lessons, and mend clothes, and do all the small essential tasks that made a family run. Not because she had to. Not to prove anything to anyone. But because this was her life now. Hard-won and imperfect and completely beautifully real. A family built not on blood, but on choice. On commitment. On love that persisted through every obstacle until it became unbreakable. She'd thought her heart had been shattered beyond repair. Turned out, it had just been broken open, making room for more love than she'd ever imagined possible. 4 children who called her Ma. A husband who saw her worth when she'd forgotten it herself. A community that had stood beside them. A home that held them all. This was redemption. This was grace. This was what happened when you were brave enough to risk your broken heart one more time and trust that maybe, just maybe, it would be worth it. It was worth it. Every moment of fear and uncertainty and desperate hope. Every battle fought and won. Every tear shed and prayer whispered into the dark. All of it led here to this perfect, imperfect life. And as sleep pulled her under, surrounded by everyone she loved, Aneth Bennett knew with absolute certainty she was exactly where she belonged, with exactly who she belonged with, living exactly the life she was meant to live. They were family, real and legal and permanent, and nothing would ever take that away again.